Does he have it? He's going to get it. He haven't got it.
He's on the outside line, though, going into the fastest corner on the circuit. Surely this can't work.
Dominic Ligner has got a sensational run outside line now, though, for the heavy braking zone. Around the outside goes the Audi R8.
Look how much Miller's come back into play. Exactly. Miller's still such up. He's not a second and change. All of a sudden, Miller's back in play.
Can Barry do it? Big Barry's going to do it. Big Barry!
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the WSC Virtual World Sports Car Championship here from Champion Motorsports on the JPBroadcasting Network. It's the historic series. We finished out Moderns. Now we've got to finish out the historics. 3 rounds to end this season. Still plenty of storylines to find. Still plenty of points on the table. And we will see how things play out. It's going to be myself, Bradley Dalton, in the booth with a good friend of mine, Alex Goldschmidt. And instead of Paul Glover, we have the James Parfit himself, who's going to be in the air. He's promised not to talk as much as Paul. I don't know if I believe him. We'll update you as the race goes on. But let's go ahead and take a look at where we're going to be racing today. Well, it's Bridgehampton. We've got Provence Alps Hill Climb coming up, and we've got the great, wonderful city of Paris on the 7th of December. We've made it from Daytona all the way back on the 17th of February, all the way through. Of course, Monza a few weeks ago was absolutely amazing, but we're now here in New York at Bridgehampton. This is a track that, on paper, looks not complicated, but I'll tell you right now, talking to one Mr. Ross Smith before the broadcast went live, it's pretty complicated. It's 11 turns. And again, deceptively hard. It looks simple here. We're on the 1957 layout. We'll see how things go. The strategy for D1 and D2, stay nimble and keep the momentum. Every car is equal, and that's something that I don't think we've said a lot this season. And we're looking at about 15 to 20 minutes, 4 to 6 stops across this 250 kilometers here today that we're going to run. It's going to be interesting to see how D3 handles, though, because it's different depending on what car you're in. If you're in the Shelby, all we can say is go fast. If you're in the 250 or the C2, it's all about the consistency and the tire wear. Tire wear is something that we're going to talk about a lot through this race as it stands, and I'm really interested to see how they handle it as we go. Keys to the race here: stay off the sand. Yes, stay off the sand. Focus on distance, not time. This is a distance race, 250 kilometers. Don't worry about how long it's going to take you. Just run it through, and well-timed passing. This is a small, narrow track. We're going to be looking for lots of challenging passes all the way through. And again, once those classes mix up, this race is never the same. Let's get to the scores on the doors as they stand. Here in Div 3 Pro, Bradley Sellers leads the way with 66.2 points here over Nicholas Kirsten at 58.75. Magnus Dahlgren is in third with 57.9. JT Tammy is in fourth with 53.65. Vuda de Bruin at 34.45. Timon Subic at 26.3. Ethan Funk at 20.9. Ross Smith at 15.5. Tom Lane 11.85. And Mike Bell at 11.8. And then we've got another 11 cars on there. If I didn't say your favorite driver's name in Div 3, find them there on the standings, and make sure you support them. Emmy Racing Ferrari 250 GTOs are leading our team standing, with Smile Power Racing Shelby Daytona's in second, and the Rookie Monster Shelby Daytona in third. In the Div 3 AM standings, We've had 8 drivers take part here this season. Jerry Chen leading the way, 94.3 points, with George Angelides in second place. We see them battle so much, and I'm really interested to see their battle to the end. John Mayer in third, Barry DeMarzo in fourth, Jason Whited in fifth, David Kors in sixth, Peter Meyer in seventh, and Harslav Zakic in P8. Scuderia Cavalli Ferrari leads the way in the Div 3 AM team standings, with the Flying Kiwi Racing Ferraris in second place. Now, let's talk about Div 1 2 AM. No team standings here, just driver standings. Adam Gray, 72.5 points, with Eric Monet at 69.7. Michael Locke, 41.8. James Bowders at 21.3. Fernando Ferreira at 20.8. David Bacaceladon at 20.4. Tom Mountjoy, Santiago Dancourt, Luke Goodlife, Filippo Marazzi, Pavel Cherblov, Matthias Bogle, Philippe Ducardi, Stephen Miller, and Stacy Scott's your 15 drivers in that Div 1-2 AM standings. Now, the Div 1-2 pros, Aliko Busink at 70.6 points leads Dan Herlock at 63.35. Cameron Barker in third, Ben Borman in fourth, Reese Gardner in fifth, Becky Ely in sixth place in that Lotus, David Junt in P7, Oliver Day, Dan Kirby, and Robin Mulling are your top 10. Now, 23 drivers have taken place in the Div 1-2 standings, and if I didn't say your favorite driver, be sure to find them. There's a lot of names we talk about a lot that are spread through this field. Joy Motorsports Porsche 904s lead the way in the team standings. Mike Bell Motorsports and the Alfa Romeos in second. Futego Monsters Lotus 23B in third, and Alpha Australis is in fourth. So, that rounds out our standings. That rounds out everything. And let's go ahead and bring in one wonderful Mr. Alex Goldschmidt here today. Alex, good evening, sir.
Good evening, Brad. Good evening, everybody. Good to be back alongside you after the madness we had at Monza last time out. And boy, was that a show.
Madness at Monza, that is the best alliteration you could use. It was a good time, though. I enjoyed it personally. I don't know that all of our drivers enjoyed it. Of course, hopefully we have no acrobatics today, but
Wouter De Bruyne, mentioning no names.
Yeah, no names at all. So, what are we making out of Bridgehampton? It's a track that, while I've been watching practice and qualifying, it's kind of caught me off guard how difficult these cars are finding this track, or how easy it is.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to find that the Div 1s and the Div 2s, with their characteristics, are going to find it a little bit easier. But then when you've got the power of the Div 3s, then, you know, coming out of Ahrens turn at turn 11 into Hangson at turn 1, you know, that's going to be the main overtaking opportunity, I think. But in some respects, the layout looks not too dissimilar to Brands Hatch Indy, but of course you've got a lot of sand, so it's New York's equivalent of Zandvoort in some respects. But we've seen a little bit of video before the drivers went out for time qualifying, and that some of the Div 3s, you know, some of those cars where they've got over 300 plus horsepower, especially if you have got the Corvette Stingrays, which have actually struggled, but it was Wouter De Bruyne that put it on pole position for overall qualifying, and it's going to be a Daytona 250 front row, because you've got Nicholas Kirsten leading the charge of the prancing horses. Robin Merling was quickest in the Alfa Romeo Giulia in Div 1 and 2 Pro, ahead of Ben Bullman and Becky Ely. So Lotus 23s could be something to watch out for. Of course, they've got the lowest fuel capacity of any of the cars on the grid apart from the Porsche 904s. And then we've got, I think, 23 cars on the grid, rounded out by Daniel Scott in the number 07 Alfa Romeo Giulia TZ. So, yeah, this is going to be a race that's going to be quite mixed, I think.
Something in me wants to lean towards the Lotus. I don't know what it is, but something in me wants to really lean into that Lotus. I think it's going to be a very competitive car. This seems like a track that is going to just favor that style of car very well. And again, we've seen this season, you know, kind of up and down. Some tracks are very Div 3 heavy for power. Some tracks are very Div 1-2 heavy just for the nimbleness. And this is a track that, just based on what I've seen, Div 1-2 seems like they're going to have a very good time if they can manage the fuel well.
Yeah, and then also the fact of the closing rate of speeds coming down the start-finish straight from turns 11 to turn 1. you know, that's where we're going to see the speed disparity. I mean, obviously with Monza last time out, we were using the old oval as well, which really put the cat amongst the proverbial pigeons, but also gave us some great two-way scraps for multiple positions, including class victories. So I think that when you look at how many right-hand corners there are in the first 4 turns, they're all right-handers, and then we go into 4 successive left-hand corners before we go into another 3. So another 3 right-handers. So you've got pretty much 7 out of 11 corners are all right-handers. But again, it's a case of in the keys to the race. Don't worry about the time. It's going to be 55 laps of this just shy of 4.6 kilometer circuit, or just over 2.8 miles. So it's laps counting down rather than waiting for 2 hours to elapse. So, but the momentum is going to be crucial.
That it is. And also, hello to everybody in the YouTube chat joining us here today. Stacy, please don't ag on James to aggravate me. He's going to do it naturally. I don't need him to have the support on it. Again, we'll see what happens as things go.
Bradley's ears have gone bright red and they're burning with flames, folks.
I really, really hope that James
JP,
has
shut
forgotten to
up.
mute himself. I really hope James has forgotten to mute himself.
No, he can though. That's
a good point. Okay, so let's talk about one of the things that I think might shake things up a bit more than just the thing, the natural balance of the cars, because all of our cars on track, the 22 that qualified, and we've got 23 in session, we're only separated by about 7 seconds, and that's very, very close of a gap for Div 3 and 1-2 all the way around to be mixed. But penalties are something that we are carrying a lot of into Bridgehampton. There are some pretty significant stop holds that are being issued out for this race.
Yeah, I mean, Luca Tavanari's got a caution for car control. Car control is going to be quite crucial. You know, you look at the Ferraris, I think they're probably going to be the best of the Div 3 cars. You know, you look at the power to weight ratio. Okay, yes, it's not the most powerful car, but in terms of the weight, you know, you've got 310 horsepower on a car that weighs just over 1,040 kilos, but then you go to a Corvette that's got nearly 400 horsepower from the 327 cubic inch small block V8, but then you've got a car that is nearly 300 kilos heavier. Do the math on that one. Momentum's going to be in the favour of Ferrari. I think I'm going to side with you with regards to the Lotus B23 with the 1340cc Cosworth Mark 6 inline 4 engine. You know, you're talking, okay, yes, 115 horsepower, but we saw at Monza that car was actually pretty nippy at times. But this is where the cars that had the best handling characteristics, the best power to weight ratio, which also will relate to acceleration, could mean that the 250 GTO in Div 3 and the B23 Lotus in Divs 1 and 2 could be the cars to watch out for today, I think.
I'd agree with that. This is going to be a very, very mixed up race compared to what we're used to, I feel. And honestly, just getting to the end is probably going to be what answers our questions for what cars where. You know, we can always predict, we can always have ideas, but at the end of the day, the drivers like to prove us wrong here in the booth. And that is something that you learn to love in this position, is that the drivers will prove you wrong one way or another as we go through. Drivers are doing the warm-up session now. Ross Smith, you'll notice, is not in the booth with us because he is serving as the de facto admin today. So he is actually the one kind of calling the shots, telling the drivers what to do, helping them check their pit boxes and do all of the fun things as they get ready for the race. He has to give them the fun story of here's what to do, here's your pre-race brief. Please don't give me more work later, because he doesn't want to spend all night reviewing and adding penalties.
Yeah, that's the thing. And also good to see the likes of Chief Spoogie going hello. Stacey saying, lol, I'm just messing with you, Brad. We've got Kim D in the chat as well. So good to have you all along, both not just on the JP Broadcasting Network, but also on the Champion Sim Racing YouTube channel as well. please don't forget to like, share and subscribe. And of course, with all this sand, these drivers will find that tyres may degrade quite significantly. Plus also the fact that when it's a 250 kilometre race, with being 55 laps, not including the formation lap, drivers will have to pick their spots on when they decide to pit. Obviously, you went through the strat calls. The drivers have got to work out, but then we saw it in Monza that some drivers were fuel saving, and that's going to be quite crucial in its own right, because with a more momentum gathering circuit, again, slipstream will play a factor.
It will, even on this short circuit. And, you know, one of the things with tire wear, and Ross, again, pre-broadcast, was chatting with me a little bit. MNRL runs on Tuesday nights, and they ran 200 kilometers. And Ross said by the end of that, the tires were screaming. They were gone. And now we're going to add another 50 kilometers to that. So tires, if you are a tire whisperer, if you're somebody who can really nurse this car along, if you can take away that 1% of driving to save those tires through to the end, I think this could be a race that we could see somebody just kind of sneak up, win, and go through, take off on things. It's going to be interesting to see here. Drivers are going through, they're warming up now, and Alex, for the warm-up laps here, it's not something we traditionally really see, and we're already seeing wrecks. Oh.
Yellow in sector 3 already. Whoops. That's all I'm going to say on that one.
We saw, I'm not sure who that was, right off the edge of the screen slide through and bump someone trying to go into the pits and slide off. So, well, if that is telling me how this race is going to go, then, well, ladies and gentlemen, buckle in, because I have a feeling that Paul picked a good one to miss, because we're going to have a busy broadcaster in the background.
Yeah, I'd agree it is going to be a bit of a tough time, but the thing is that we've still got this and 2 more rounds to go, so anything's up for grabs, and it ain't over until the last checkered flag flies at the end of the season for the historics for the 1964 season. So it's all about being as perfect as you can, but yeah, no one's perfect, we know that, and mistakes will be made.
Mistakes can be made aplenty, and one of the things I like is that this pit lane through here has sand on it. Like, the sand there, you know, when drivers go back, it goes through. It's a very unique setup. I'm curious to see how it goes, and Ross Smith has decided to join us for a brief moment while the drivers are going around. Ross, we've already had a spin. We haven't even started.
Yeah, I mean, get them out now. Well, it doesn't really count, so that's what they're doing, I suppose.
You know, that's probably a good option as it sits. Let's talk for a second real quick about the cars, Ross. Any big changes that have been made going in? The cars seem fairly stable through. They look good, or anything that we should know about, or has all attention turned to next year's historic cars in that regard?
Yeah, there isn't anything new that's been done here. Again, we have been watching to make sure that all the BOP is still strong after each of one of the rounds, and so far all indications are yes. Obviously there are some track car combinations that are much more suitable for different drivers, and like for instance today the Lotus is looking pretty strong down in Div 1 and 2. Becky and Ben have been able to make pretty good headway with the setup on that one, and probably a lot more so than when they were at Monza. And we're coming into this one, the C2, despite its fuel advantage, I don't know if it's going to be able to hold out. This track really works tires, and that boat definitely suffers from that. So I think the Ferrari is actually going to have the advantage in the end, but the Shelbys are also pretty strong. I'd say look out for Valter and Bradley Sellers if he can overcome his penalty. And they're going to be fighting really hard, tooth and nail with, I guess, Dahlgren, Subic, And I thought we had Christian in here as well, but maybe he stepped out.
I don't see him at the moment. He may come back in, not for sure. Talk to me about the track for a second, because this is a very, very polished track that you all have put together here. And of course, this track does not exist now. It's a golf course in real life. As a golfer, I like it. As a racer, I hate it. Neither here nor there. But what did you all have to do to get this track going and make it look this good?
Well, Bridgehampton, I mean, it did exist already in the workshop. So I don't recall who had it offhand. It might be ODB, but apologies for not remembering that one. But yeah, it was a labor of love put together, and we were very fortunate that it's on this 1964 calendar. It actually was in real life. They came here and they put on quite a show. It's very wide and sweeping. I mean, it almost already kind of looks like a golf course in some respects, being just northeast here of the Hamptons. It's right near, I think it's, is it Sag Harbor? I can't remember the name of it. Anyway, great track, very up and down, left and right. It's all over the place. It works tires like mad. It's the kind of track that urges you to push just a little bit more and will punish you if you go over the line, as I'm sure you've seen quite a few drivers do already, myself included. So it's a great course, a fun track. When you nail a lap, you definitely feel good about it. I think that everyone today, because of it's a longer race, it's 55 laps plus the formation. You're going to have to be watching those tires, watching that fuel, and I think strategy is going to win out more than anyone who's able to control the drift and just run their smoking tires out.
It is going to be interesting to see who can tire whisper through. And Ross, are you a tire whisperer? Where am I going to see you at the end of this race?
It's tough to say, as I received a stop and hold penalty for 10 seconds for being taken out at the Nordschleife. It's unfortunate for that because we're I don't want to talk bad about the stewards. They've got a lot on their plates, but I feel like they were able to give special consideration to the driving mechanics of some of the other cars, and there wasn't really the same sort of consideration in my incident. But that's the driver's perspective, and we're going to just have to go through and serve it out, and hopefully we're able to make it up. But a 10-second stop and hold is definitely going to hurt us. I'd say probably we'd be lucky if we're in the top 10 by the end.
And I'll tell you, Ross, if this was the FIA, they would be calling you in for some community service for back talking them. So good on you for accepting it. So we'll let you jump in. I know that the session's about to get going here. So, and of course, you've got a big plate today. So, Ross, we're going to let you jump back and get ready for the race. And we'll see how that stop hold affects you. And maybe we'll talk to you again later.
Yeah, I'd look forward to it. Enjoy the race. This one's going to be another wild one. I think you and Alex for sure are going to have a good time. Alex was talking before about how crazy Monza was. I think you're going to see a lot more fun action here too.
I'm looking forward to it. Take it easy, Ross. We'll catch you later.
All right, take care, guys.
All right. Well, when Ross is saying that the race is going to be crazy, Alex, I think we can bank that the race is going to be a little bit crazy.
I completely 100% concur with the pair of you on that one. You go to a different circuit, completely different layout, but of course there are going to be challenges along the way. And these drivers are not going to find it easy. They're going to be perspiring. They're going to be mentally and physically taxed throughout this race, which, as Ross rightly said, 55 laps, so just a shade over 250 kilometers. Then you've also got the formation lap, so it will be a standing start. But yeah, quite a few people, as he said, he's got a stop and hold. Robin Merling has also got a stop and hold for 10. Bradley Sellers has got a stop and hold for 10. Gilles Lalonde, who was with us at Monza, doesn't look to be on the grid this time. So a few of these, JT Tammy has also got a stop and hold 10. So yeah, the stewards have definitely had to say to the drivers, calm it down a little bit. Obviously, Ross talking about his penalty thanks to the round at the Nordschleife. But yeah, I think the divs 1 and 2s are going to spice it up quite a bit, especially with how mixed up the grid was following on from qualifying.
Look at the Lotus here trying to kick the rear end out, drift around the corners. I can't tell if this is actual practice or just a little bit of a fun run here from Ben Borman and Becky Ely. It looks like this is maybe just a little bit of seeing how the Lotus handles through and around, and it seems to be handling okay. Again, this is a car that the more I look at it, the more I like it. And this is a car that I got absolutely roasted at round 1 for not having a preference of the Lotus. But as I've seen it through the season, it has looked good. And you have some moments like it running a little wide, but there it is through. We're going through, getting ready to start our formation lap and start our session. We'll get the grid pulled up here momentarily and run you down the order of how the drivers will start this 55+1 formation lap session here. 56 laps in total here today, and this is how your grid lines up. It's Wouter de Bruin in P1 with Nicholas Kirsten in P2, Magnus Dahlgren in 3rd, and Bradley Sellers in 4th place. From there, we're going to go P5, which finds Ross Smith in 6th place, Timon Subic. 7th place, Alexander Scholes. 8th place, Robin Moling. From there, we're going to move on to P9, which is going to bring us one Ben Borman. 10th place, Becky Ely. Luca Tavernari in P11, and Dan Herlock in 12th place. From there, we're looking at P13, which is going to have us Oliver Day running through with Pierre Moreno in 14th, JT Tammy in the C2 Stingray in 15th, and Aliko Busink in P16. From there, 17th place, John Mayer, Peter Meyer in the C2 and P18, Neil Wood in the Porsche 904 and P19. Scar Pope will round out 20th place, and just 3 more cars to go here. Adam Gray, Eric Monet, and Daniel Scott. 23 cars. It's a smaller grid, but for a smaller track, I'll tell you right now, it's going to feel just as busy as ever. And again, once these classes start to mix up, which may take longer than normal, again, with a very, very competitive and close lap time, it's going to be closer than we traditionally see here from all the cars, but we should start seeing some classes lap around, I'd say after about 10 or 15 laps. And Alex, that's when things get really interesting.
Yeah, that will be the case, and obviously it's going to be down to the responsibility of the faster traffic, including the Div 3s, to get round past the Divs 1 and 2s very, very quickly. But they've all got to have spatial awareness here, Brad. This is a tight, momentum-carrying circuit, so it really is going to put the cat amongst the pigeons.
This is going to be the case where if you've really, really practiced, it's going to show, and if you haven't practiced, it's going to be even more obvious. This is where I think the consistency part will play in. Who has really locked the time? Who has buckled up the belts? Who has put the laps in their historic cars to really get comfortable with the car control around this sandy, tricky, tire-eating track? We're about to find out here at the end of the race. Ladies and gentlemen, YouTube chat, and make sure you've got popcorn, you've got water, make sure you're ready to go. Chief Spudgy says, I hope there's not a big crash on start. Well, we don't normally see one, but we never know what happens. And Stacy Scott's game says the 00 Shelby of Ross Smith will win. Well, I'll tell you what, Stacy, if you're right, I'm giving you a high five through the internet. And there's only one way to find out. It's stay tuned through to the end. Alex, they're coming around the final couple of corners here. They're getting ready for the action, and we're about to have a race on our hands.
Yeah, very much the case. I mean, ambient temperature is 22 degrees, track temperature 39. So it is going to put the tyres through the ringer, especially if they go off circuit, bring up that sand onto the track. Could compromise other drivers with unsafe rejoins if they do occur, Bradley. But game on, let's go racing.
Through the final corners we go. This is through the Arntz turn out of the East Straight. Turn 11 comes around. It's orange zone through turn 4. Doesn't mean you can't pass, just means you really got to pick your way through when we go. Mr. Wouter de Bruin will lead the field down. Kirsten Dahlgren, P2, P3, but it is going to get Shelby that leads our way down. Green flag in the air, and we are going for these 55 laps here around Bridgehampton. And very quickly, Wouter de Bruin is going to get the move done here to pull a big gap in the lead, go through, hold that Shelby nice and comfortable. You see a little wiggly, the historic handling. Talked about it all season, and it shows yet again as they come through. Excuse me, Div 1-2 now makes their way down, and that is going to be led by Robin Moling there in the Alfa Romeo, but those Lotuses are very quick, and they're right there for company. And it seems like everyone's gotten away pretty well here, Alex.
Yeah, Ben Billman closing in on Robin Merling, who's got to have to serve that stop hold 10 on the first pit stop. Becky Ely making it a three-way battle for the lead in Div 1 and 2 Pro. Nicholas Kirsten we're on board with, who's trying to close in on Wouter de Bruyne. Gap now is about 4 and a bit tenths of a second, make that half a second. And closing with Magnus Dahlgren. So it's Shelby leading the way, 2 Ferrari 250 GTOs second and third. Bradley Sellers, Ross Smith, Timon Suvic and Alexander Schultz running at the top 7. And you can see, oh, look at the wiggle and then the sideways momentum. It was sideways for Nicholas Kirsten, who's lighting up the right rear under braking. That's allowing Dahlgren to close quickly.
Yeah, that is not what you want to do here on lap 1 as we go along. You've got a long way to make those tires last and make this car last, and that is not what you want to be doing this early on. We jump back here. The Lotuses are jockeying for position here. It is Borman ahead of Ely at the moment. Ely, you can see, has the yellow stripes along that Lotus, and Borman just solid green on green as we go through. And Becky Ely has won a race here this season, is a very, very fast driver, and will be looking to pull a second win out of the season as we continue around. Lap 2 underway here as we go, and you can see really quick Borman is trying to get past Moling very quickly here into turn 1 around the outside. Moling tapping the brakes there up the Alpha, goes through, and new leader in Div 1-2, Ben Borman.
Yeah, Ben Borman, and then you've got Becky Ely being followed by the pair of Daniel Hurlock and Luca Tavanari. So things in Div 1 and 2 Pro, very, very close indeed. They are covered by probably about 2 seconds as Hurlock's looking to fire it around the outside of Becky Ely, who in turn is trying to go up the inside of Ralph Merling. But this is a real scramble, as also Ben Borman closing in on Alexander Schultz, trying to make it a Div 1-2 pass to Div 3 car.
Very, very hard action they go around as they continue. This is going to be where I think the majority of the back and forth is going to go for the day. We're going to see some battles up front. We're going to see Magnus Dahlgren, Wouter de Bruyne battle. We're going to see Nicholas Kirsten, Bradley Sellers all get in the mix. Ross Smith is going to be up there as well. But this is really what I think. The Div 1-2s are so closely matched that I think this is going to be where the big battle is. This is on board with Borman. Borman getting a run up the inside there, around, clears it through, and gets through, and that is a good pass on Schultz. Div 1-2 battling it out with Div 3, but Div 3 again has that power to just push back down the straight. But in the turns, the Div 1-2, especially that Lotus, is just so nimble and can just outmaneuver. Look at this.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, and there's also a bit of a battle between De Bruyne and Dahlgren. Dahlgren's just been in the fastest lap of the race, a 1:44.216. Also, one of the things I'm noticing here, Brad, the Div 3s are topping out at about 150 to 153 miles an hour. The disparity between them and the Div 1 and 2s, I mean, the Lotus 23B Ford of Ben Borman is topping out at about 135. So it looks like we are going to have an even battle as sideways. Sideways there for Magnus Dahlgren, who manages to hang on to it. He was very much Mr. Sideways at Monza last time out.
It is the best way to handle these cars, the drivers seem to think, is to really just let the back end kick out, let it slide a little bit. And, you know, the tires might disagree, but the drivers, that seems to be, especially in this Div 3, just how they like to handle them. They like to let them slide a little bit, and it's kind of just their fastest way through. So we're going to see a lot of that, and it's basically, it's controlled drifting, controlled Formula Drift in historic cars, 1964 cars. Who would have guessed it? Certainly not me as we go through. Dahlgren still trying to chase down De Bruyne here, still trying to put some pressure. The gap ebbs and flows as they go, but Dahlgren can't find really any headway. De Bruyne is just rock solid right now.
Yeah, very much the case. Alexander Schultz, in the meantime, has dropped behind the 3 Div 1 and 2 cars of Ben Borman, Daniel Hurlock and Becky Ely, as Dahlgren is now going to park it into the pits. I think also that was Bradley Sellers going in, probably to serve their well, Bradley Sellers is going to serve his stop hold 10 now, as so will Ross Smith. So they're all doing the same thing, getting these penalties out of the way. That's going to be crucial, and that's another key to the race as well.
Yeah, and for Dahlgren, this is unfortunate that he's got to do this now because he has a stop and hold 55 seconds that he is serving. So he had a stop hold 25 and a stop go. Becky Ely, what are you, man?
She was all over the place at that point. Alexander Schultz got through, and now she's being closed in on by Luca Tavanari. We've got another yellow out in Sector 1, so track limits are going to be something that the server's going to be very much overpowered with here today at Bridgehampton. And another yellow out in Sector 1 as Becky Ely tries to get through. There's Ross Smith. Oh, that's a bit sideways there for the Shelby Daytona.
They're loving the sand there on the outside of the corner. It's just absolutely going through. So we're going to get a lot of those off tracks there through the corner. Just the cars are sliding wide. That's turn 3 and turn 4. We're going to see a lot of drivers, especially as Ross told us, before the broadcast, Alex, once they come out of the pits, the cars are so heavy, we're going to see a lot of drivers be significantly slower after pit stops, just trying to keep the cars on the track.
Yeah, that's very much the case. Peter Meyer being closed in on by Scar Pope and the number 21 Alpine A110. That is the battle for 14th overall. And is that going to be the move? Yeah, well, Meyer having to keep that Chevy on the black stuff. And there is also Bradley Sellers, who's rejoined in 16th overall. So Sellers, we know, can be very, very quick. He showed that pace at Monza as Borman puts in the new, that's Ben Borman, new fastest lap of the race, 140, well, for the class, 144.350. Wouter de Bruyne, who's got a 2.3 second lead over Nicholas Kirsten, has got the fastest lap of the race, a 143.509. And then we got another one for Mayer in his own right. That's John Mayer in the 250. For him, in the Div 3 AM class, he's a car ahead of Peter Meyer, with Pierre Moreno not too far behind either. And there goes through Bradley Sellers in the meantime on Peter Meyer, and that's a change for 14th overall. So Sellers now starting to wind up the wick on that number 93 Shelby Daytona.
As we go through, Scar Pope now in the pits as well. Drivers really finding their rhythm here. They've gotten those first 5 laps in, and I think at this point, everyone's realized this is a long race. They found that rhythm, they've settled it in. We've gotten some of the early scraps out of the way, and this is the point where the drivers know it's a matter of survival. They've got to watch the sand. They've got to watch, the sand, the track limits, the other cars, and they're starting to try to just build gaps and get into the flow. Even though this is a lap counted race, it is a distance race. And while we're not driving to necessarily a timer, of 2 hours, 90 minutes, whatever you may think when you think of a endurance race, timed race, we're still driving essentially to that endpoint that we know will come.
Yeah, very much the case, as you can just see how hard Wouter de Bruyne is hustling that car through at Millstone Turn at turn 3 on the run down towards Colasanti Corner at T4. And then here's Pierre Moreno versus Neil Wood. So 2 Porsche 904 GTSs going wheel to wheel, side by side, down the main straightaway out of T11 on the run down to Hangston Turn. And here comes Bradley Sellers with a big rate of speed. Decides to back out of it because he doesn't want to impede himself with a potential future penalty. As both Wood and Moreno go off track, and Moreno into the back of Wood. Oh, that's multiple bits of contact between the pair, and into the sand they go.
Thankfully for them, there's no barrier close by, so no issues of slamming a barrier out of nowhere. But unfortunately for them, they're all the way out into the sand, onto the beach. They might as well just go dip their toes in the ocean as we go. And that was a moment and a half there. That was 1 contact, 2 contact, and Pierre Moreno has now DNF'd from the session. Pierre Moreno, our first loss of 23 cars here today, and it came all the way on lap 7 of 56.
That just goes to show, I mean, Pierre Moreno took a significant amount of damage at that point. Here we go with the Champion Motorsports replay very shortly. But, well, Moreno just, look, you see that Wood goes off. Moreno, just loses it under braking, tags the back. Then there's a secondary impact into the right rear of Wood, and then spins the car around. You can see the damage on the right rear of the 151, and then there's going to be a further contact as they literally are both passengers, and off into the sand dunes they go. Bradley Sellers, in the meantime, also goes off track at that point and loses a position in his own right, but he managed to keep a hold of it, unlike the two behind him that ended up behind him, with Moreno DNFing, unfortunately.
I think for Bradley Sellers, that may have just been a sympathy off, knowing the cars around. You have a big moment like that in front of you, and it can completely cut your focus. So Bradley Sellers, though, able to keep it on track, keep it moving. NP11 ahead of Ross Smith by 1.9 seconds. We jump back here with Luca Tavernari, who is chasing down Becky Ely here. Gap 0.3 of a second. The Lotus, though, still looking comfortable here against the Alpha. Becky Ely looking very, very comfortable here as we run, still going through. Becky Ely running in P6 overall, with Ben Borman, the other Lotus, running P4 overall. And that is, yes, Div 1 and 2s, the top 3 Div 3s, and then it's Div 1 and 2s all the way down to 8th place overall.
Magnus Dahlgren, who's all the way down in 22nd position, has just put in a new fastest lap overall of anybody as Tavernari sends it up the inside through on Becky Ely. Is the Lotus going to be able to hang it around the outside of the Alfa Romeo? Not quite. Oh, there's a bit of a head check between the two, and Ely goes through the sand. And Tavernari getting his elbows out somewhat.
Yeah, I don't know that Tavernari meant to do that, per se. I don't think that was an intentional run someone off the road, but I think that's a case of just the cars get a little wiggly sometimes in the corner, and occasionally you'll just have a little bit of contact. Thankfully, no harm, no foul. Both drivers continue on, but Becky Ely will remember that, and Becky Ely will be trying for a pass here in a few laps, and will look and try to get a run, and maybe Becky Ely will stick her elbows out and just kind of repay the favor.
Yeah, as I was alluding to before, we saw that inadvertent contact between Tavernari and Ely. Magnus Dahlgren 142.976. And again, just showcasing how much the dynamic of this race has changed. I'm looking at the gap between Timon Suvic and Ben Borman at the moment is 3.2 seconds. Plus also Stacey saying rest in Pepperoni Moreno. That is actually quite a good one, so well done. Doyle Rudolph says that's a really tough place to leave your car on the outside. Well, the thing is, people are going for positions. They've got championships to battle for. We've got this and 2 more rounds to go, as Magnus Dahlgren makes his way up to 20th overall, getting past Daniel Scott in the number 07 Alfa Romeo as they go through turns 1 into 2 and then up the dip through into Millstone turn here at 3. You can just see the elevation change. Magnus Dahlgren just literally tail wagging the dog, or the horse, so to speak, in the number in that number 89 Ferrari 250 GTO. But he's making steady progress at the moment, is Magnus.
Yeah, for Magnus, this is a drive of recovery. Even though Magnus was fighting up front very early on and was doing very well, this is just a recovery drive at this point. That 55-second stop hold really wearing down, dropping Magnus to 20th place of a 23-car field. He was all the way back in 23rd for a period of time. He's fought his way back up to P20, and he is currently sitting 68 seconds off of our lead driver of Vuda de Bruin. So we will keep our eyes for Magnus Dahlgren to see what Magnus Dahlgren can do to close out 68 seconds in approximately 46 laps here. Plenty of time, but if Magnus Dahlgren misses the breaking point like that too many times, it's going to be a little bit more difficult than you would think. But he is putting in fastest lap after fastest lap and continuing to have the fastest lap on track out of anybody lap after lap after lap. So if there's anyone to keep an eye on, it is going to be Magnus Dahlgren. We jump back with Becky Ely here, who is trying to have a run back on Scholes and get a pass done here up into 7th place overall. And Becky Ely looking for a pass through. We saw her get passed earlier from Alexander Scholes, and we see Becky Ely trying to fight back.
Yeah, also going through out of turn 6 into 7, Alexander Schultz getting the Ferrari 250 GTO completely all 4 wheels into the air, so there is a little bit of a hidden bump there that the drivers have to contend with. But Becky Ely doing her damnedest to close on in. I mean, looking at the lap times between the two previously, Alexander Schultz a 1:44.3, Becky Ely a second adrift at that point, but the gap between them is 2 tenths. So Ely is trying to close that gap. Ben Borman, in the meantime, is going significantly quicker than Timon Suvic. Now that's an interesting development. The gap is about 2.3 seconds between the number 81 Div 3 Ferrari 250 in 3rd overall. It now expands to 3.1 seconds as the final sector is where the Div 1 and 2 cars lose a little bit of speed on the straights. It's around about 15 miles an hour difference between Timon Suvic and the Ferrari and Ben Borman in the car that has the lowest horsepower but has the lightest weight. So acceleration and momentum carrying seems to be in the Lotus 23's favour.
Yeah, when you look at the sector times, turns 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, the twisty bits, of course, are going to the Div 1-2. This is going to be Eric Monet, who is going to run very wide here. It doesn't even look like Eric Monet tried to tap the brakes there and ran through. And then, of course, we jump up. Robin Mullen then doing the same thing to the inside. And it seems like Eric Monet just giving a little bit of sympathy there to Mullen, who ran inside. So Monet said, hey, if you're going to run wide, run the outside here. And now we see Mullen into 18th place continuing along. But back to my point there after that replay, Div 1-2s are fastest in the middle sector by a considerable margin. And even then, they're holding their own in the first sector. As you said, Alex, it truly is that 3rd sector, which is the east straight, down out of the hairpin, and then down the main straight is really where they're losing time. If it wasn't for that, I would argue that Div 1-2 would be faster.
Yeah, and I think that differential is going to change as well once the fuel tanks get a little bit lighter. You know, they'll be able to carry a bit more speed into the corners as JT Tammy in the Chevy Corvette Stingray currently running 17th, closing in on the recently off-track 904 GTS of Eric Monnier. This is the battle for 16th on the road. Also, more to the point, Robin Merling, who's currently 18th, running 7th in Div 1-2 Pro, if I remember, was actually the pole sitter in the class, and his race has gone tumbling a lot further than he would have liked. And just by that off-track we just just saw Merling in the background there getting a little bit tail-happy in the 07 Julia. Again, it's just showcasing these drivers, as I said earlier on in the broadcast, are going to be physically and mentally taxed around this very, very tight momentum-carrying circuit. And here comes JT Tammy and just gets past Monnier, likely standing still. 148 miles an hour, plays 131. That's a big speed disadvantage for the 904 GTS, but of course different class as Tammy keeps the corner speed carried through in towards turn 3. Flame shoots from the side exit exhaust on the Chevy through at turn 3 at Millstone Turn. But again, it's just as you said, we see these Div 1 and 2 cars really show their spurs to the Div 3 cars through this second sector of the track.
Yeah, and it's so fun to watch, just the difference in the cars. And one of the things I'm noticing is we really haven't had lap traffic start yet. I thought by about lap 10, lap 15, we would really start seeing cars lap, but that's how close the pace and the difference is here. And the one thing I am noting as I look at lap times, Div 3s are managing a lot more than I thought they would be. As we see De Bruin here, his fastest lap was a 1:43.1. His last lap was a 1:43.2. But when you compare that to the Div 1-2s, Ben Borman, our lead Div 1-2, 1:44.3. Last lap was a 1:44.7. There's not that much of a pace difference to really encourage that sort of closing of the field. Even when you go to the back, they're still running 145s, 146s. Down at the bottom of this 22 car field as it stands now. So we're not really going to see the big case of cars lapping cars that we're used to with these mixed class races. This isn't going to be the traditional setup where you have the fast Div 3s just flying past Div 1-2s all the time. They're really going to have to work for it when they finally catch up, and it may be much later in the race than we're used to.
Yeah, I'll probably say past the halfway point, maybe into the last 15 laps is where we're going to see more of these overtakes happening. When you look at Scar Pope in the Alpine A110 down in 22nd place, is 1 minute and 23 away from Wouter de Bruin. So we could see our first overtake maybe in the next, I would say, 10 to 15 laps, possibly, give or take, just depending on the speed. I mean, at the minute, Daniel Scott has ended up going down into 22nd position and is 1 minute and 24 behind. So, yeah, that's 19 seconds as Nicholas Kirsten sets the all-time fastest third sector at 25.2, 0.3 quicker than Wouter de Bruin, who's still hanging on to a lead of around, 1.5 seconds. So the tyres seem to be degrading a little bit more on these Div 3 cars, whereas the Div 1 and 2s realistically have an opportunity to showcase their prowess, and that is just the case of how this track is just playing out to the drivers.
As the race has gone on, the one thing I will note is that the track temp has gone up since we started. Track temp right now 41 degrees Celsius. It is scorching hot here on the beach. The sand is going to be helping nothing. And looking through right now, we're watching Peter Meyer here as he goes through. We're going to get a quick replay here. This is going to be John Meyer as we go around. What did the 88 do? Well, went off to play in the sand. And I'll tell you right now, that's hard to wash out of a car. I don't know if you've ever taken your car on a beach, or if you've ever been on a beach trip and then gotten in the car and then went home and had to vacuum your car out. If you get sand in the car, near impossible to get out.
Yeah, well, someone has just gone off in front of John Meyer in the meantime. That was Eric Mounier in the number 40 Porsche 904. So, yeah, sand, it gets everywhere, Bradley. It really, really does. In between your feet, in between your toes. And then you wonder why you've got about a sandcastle coming out of your shoe when you take it off, and then just go, hope there's nothing more of that. Wouter de Bruin, again, just starting to expand that lead over Nicholas Kirsten. So I think, as Ross alluded to earlier, that the Shelby Daytonas seem to have the edge at the moment in terms of the Ferraris, which, we were expecting a little bit more. But of course, I'm wondering how far up the order Magnus Dahlgren is going to be towards the tail end of the race. Of course, we've still got the first set of pit stops yet to come in, where no penalties are having to be thrown in the mix. So that will really show us how the strategy is going to play out between the respective classes here at Bridgehampton.
Yeah, I would expect the Div 1-2s to be stopping any time now, because what we were told... Oh, Mullen here having a moment. Look at that. Oh, and there's it coming together. That's not what you want. That is definitely not how we want to see passes go as they try to make that run. Magnus Dahlgren now running through and just says, you know what, you all figure that out. I'm going to go ahead and take a position or two. Thank you very much.
It was like two kids battling over the last swing on the sandy playground, and Magnus Dahlgren just went, yep, thank you very much, I'll take that. You could just see how quick. Well, the thing is, just seeing there, Robin Merling in the back of shot is just completely throwing reckless caution to any corner. And then we see in the background Eric Mounier doing the same thing in the number 40. Again, the Chevy. Oh dear, that was very, very unintentional contact there between the Chevy of JT Tammy and also the Alfa Romeo of Robin Merling. That just goes to show that when you put a Div 1-2 car next to a Div 3, keep your wits about you.
That wits about you with a mixed class car when you know you're the faster car in the corners, but you know you're going to get past the straightaway. That's a tall ask, Alex. I'll tell you right now, that's a very tall ask. We do have pit stops happening. And who is it? Well, it's our friends in the Lotus. It's Ben Borman and Becky Ely. They have pulled the trigger, and they are starting our first round of Div 1-2 pit stops. No surprise to me there because, of course, the Lotus has a very, very small fuel tank that we have seen causes some moments through the season. While those cars are fast and nimble, the tiny, tiny fuel tank is problematic in those cars. 34-liter fuel tank in total.
That's around about 7 gallons worth of fuel there as Magnus Dahlgren just literally powers past Neil Wood in the Porsche 904, number 151. And again, just seeing the dips and who's that going off the track? It was Robin Merling. Oh, he went and visited the sandy beach as well.
Goodbye, adios, see you later. That's not even visiting the beach. That is trying to go to the ocean. Maybe trying to find that magical hole 18 here, since again this is now a golf course. Definitely, probably scouting that out for the future here. Go through, runs it wide, and then just, well, again, it's a good thing there's no guardrails close by, but eventually,
It was like he was trying to put his towel on the sunbed first before anybody else today.
I question, are we racing or are these rally cars? Because look at this onboard replay here. Yeah, Rallycross would be very impressed. Look at this. Just over the hill. I don't have a good professional segue into this. That's just wow. That is commitment and a half, and then still full speed on the track after that. Didn't lift, didn't coast, just kept the throttle planted. That I think Kimi Räikkönen would be proud of that one.
Hi, my name's Robin Merling, and welcome to Jackass.
Absolutely. And now look, Robin Mullins already caught back up and is right back on the back of JT Tammy in that Corvette Stingray. That is how nimble these Div 1-2s are. Even though that Div 3 is going to pull a gap here, by the time we get around another lap, they're going to just go ahead and crunch it back in even more. This is ridiculous. These Div 1-2s are scary. I do want to point out back at the front, I don't know what's happened at the front, but Wouter de Bruin, the gap has went from over 2 seconds to 0.3 of a second. Look at this. We've now got a battle for the lead that's came up out of nowhere.
Yep, and yeah, that was I think they just passed the 53 car or 63 car. I think that was, well, you've definitely got a couple of Div 1-2s there. You've got an Alfa Romeo and a Porsche. So I was trying to catch up with which drivers they are. That's Adam Gray and Daniel Scott that they've just got through. So the 63 Porsche 904 and the Alfa Romeo Giulia TZ07. So they've been put a lap down. And we're not, I think we're Nicholas Kirsten getting a bit of a wiggle, but he's going to dive to the inside, is he? Not quite on Wouter de Bruin as they go up through turns 7 and 8 on the run up to the hairpin. But Wouter de Bruin, wherever he had that moment a couple of laps ago, has really opened up the opportunity for Nicholas Kirsten to close on in.
He's basically done what a valet would do and just opened the door and motioned along. And unfortunately for Nicholas Kirsten, he has tripped on his shoelace on the way because he is not getting the pass done yet. He's pushing, he's close, but he is now losing more of a gap here as we continue along. And they have 15.5 seconds back to Timon Suvic. So these two are really in a league of their own as they stand here in the front. They come along. We are starting to lap cars now since Div 1-2 has started to cycle a few pit stops here. So they are starting to let people go through. A little bit of slipstream will help De Bruin here get the run down. Kirsten just a little bit too far back, I believe, to have the advantage into one, but I could be wrong here as we go. Gap now open back up to just over a second, just under a second actually, as they go through down into 1-2, and De Bruin is, look at that, just drifting that car around. Just lets the Daytona kick the rear end out a little bit and send it along. Knows that's the way to drive the car fast, but again, I just wonder if once we get really down to that last third of the race, if he won't regret that with those rear tires.
Yeah, I think it's just sometimes when he gets past that first pit stop, he's going to have to start playing it a little bit safer. Oh, De Bruin again. Bit of a tank slapper there for the number 19. Rookie monster Shelby Daytona. And that's got that gap down to just under 3/4 of a second. So, yeah, it's about just keeping, things very, very occupied. And there's the bump there going through out of turn 6 into 7. You could just see how hard they are pushing. The cars are getting lighter and they're getting a bit higher up into the air. The more they go over these slight bumps and undulations here at the circuit, it's just incredible to see. I hate to think of how hard they're wrestling with the steering wheels and then with the brake and throttle modulation in these 1964 Div 3 cars. It's just impressive to watch every single time.
It is definitely a workout for them, and it's something that I've tried the cars, and I have nowhere near this amount of skill. So hats off to all the drivers for running it through here and continuing their cars along.
Yeah, also we've had our second DNF. Eric Monnier has retired in the number 40 car, so that's one of the two Div 1-2 AM cars that have called time on their race, whether that's... well, here comes the Champions Motorsport replay. This is Eric Monnier. Now, where is this? This is going to be through turn 2. He goes for the sandy beach. Now, what happens here? Comes back onto track, loses the back end again. Oh, this is not going to end it. Oh, he hit the tree. Straight on nose end in. Destroys the front of the vehicle. And that is now us down to 21 runners and riders.
He tried to save it. There wasn't enough to be done there. No grip to be found. Nothing to do. Once he was out on the sand, it was kind of just game over here. We jump in with Kirsten getting around that number 88 as we continue our race along, and he's trying to catch De Bruin very, very slowly, but surely, but quickly. And they just, man, he's there. It's right there, Nicholas Kirsten is. Just right there, but can't close the gap enough to try to go for the pass. De Bruin just seems so solid.
Yeah, because they've just got past John Mayer in the number 88 Div 3 AM Ferrari 250 GTO, so we're not that far away from half distance, probably in about a couple of laps time. But then, of course, just seeing flames sideways from De Bruin coming out of turn numbers 10 and 11. Manages to carry the speed through, but then you see Nicholas Kirsten. Is he going to get the overspeed now? That gap coming down to around about half a second as they're going to fire it down the hill through into Hangson Turn here at T1, and then into Turn 2, leading into Millstone Turn at 3. And this time, well, De Bruin's just got that Daytona hooked up so nicely through the first couple of corners. He's able to expand that lead again.
Yeah, last lap he was 2/10 ahead in the first sector. He was 2/10 down in the second sector. And then both him and Kirsten set their personal best sectors in the third sector. But Nicholas was up 2/10 in the third sector. So we're seeing it's very back and forth, just depending on the lap for these two here in the lead as they continue along. Dan Herlock is now pit in the Alfa Romeo Giulia in the Div 1-2. So we are seeing more Div 1-2s start to make their pit stops. And I want to give a shout out to Luca Tavernari, currently still running 4th place in the Div 1-2s and very consistently in 4th place, I must say, with a 1.5-second gap there to Alexander Scholes as they continue along here. We focus on the battle up front. Just remember that it's 4 classes of battling, and it's lots of action all the way through as we continue. current fastest lap, actually, just as another side note, is Bradley Sellers with a 1:42.7 is the fastest lap we've had on track, while Mr. De Bruin here has only put in a 1:43.1 as the fastest lap. But the difference for me is the consistency. Bradley Sellers' last lap, 1:44.5, and Woodard De Bruin has consistently been in the mid 1:43s this entire race. So definitely a lot of tire saving, or just enough of kind of turning that dial down, Alex, for De Bruin to just hold it there in the lead.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't need to be leading by a big amount, but it's got to be comfortable, and whereby he knows that at one point over Nicholas Kirsten, he had the best part of a 2.5 second lead, and he nearly threw it all away along with the race lead. So if he can keep it nice and consistent, I mean, De Bruyne was 0.6 quicker through, well, it was over 2.5 tenths quicker in the opening sector. He was 8 tenths quicker in sector number 2, and then sector 3. They were literally exactly the same on the sector times, split by about 3 1,000ths. So Kirsten is just trying to follow the lines of De Bruyne and not make any mistakes in the Ferrari. And you can see as they go through up the hill and launch it over the crest at high speed, it is just about just following the line, following the wheel tracks of De Bruyne. Just mirror what he does, but just don't be a bit too overzealous when you hit the loud pedal on the right hand side of the cockpit.
Yeah, and that, I think with the historic cars, is the big problem. The right hand pedal is the danger pedal, I find. The brake pedal just doesn't work. Just don't use it. Use it, get the car rotated, but other than that, don't expect too much out of it, is what I tend to see with these cars. It really is all the throttle modulation. Look at this run from Peter Meyer. Bye, Robin. You were sitting still, and Peter Meyer in that C2 Stingray with the pace advantage of, I mean, the Corvette Div 3 just gone. Adios. But then look at this. Look at that rear mirror there, because there's the Div 1-2 fighting right back and just sending it back up the inside, because that C2 has to slow down so much through the corners just to get around. That is, I mean, that is what we're seeing from these cars the entire time, over and over. Div 3s get the run down the straight. Div 1-2 has to just send it into a curve. It's amazing to watch.
Yeah, and now speaking of people that we're having to watch at the moment, Elko Bussink in the Joy Motorsports Porsche, closing in on the 00 of Ross Smith. Now we ride on board with Elko Bussink in the number 47. From the roof cam, you can just see the differential that when we get onto a little bit of straight tarmac, the Shelby Daytona manages to pull, stretch its legs a little bit out of the final corner. Now we ride on board. You're going to see the rev range, the rev counter in the centre of the car here. And now Elko Bussink decides to pit for the first time in the race, and so has Luca Tavanari. So now that re-promotes Ben Borman back to the race lead for Div 1-2, currently circulating in 6th overall. Bearing in mind, folks, that the Porsches and the Alphas have gotten close to half distance. So it's going to be at least, I think, possibly a 2-stopper for the Lotus 23s. I mean, we saw the first pit stops by Ben and by Becky around about lap 14. So they're going to be making probably 3 pit stops, I would think. I would say maybe for the rest of the Div 1-2s, we're probably looking at a max of 2 pit stops.
Yeah, our estimate was 4 to 6 stops for Div 1-2, and I'd say that's probably a little bit high, but still plenty of time to go. I would think the Lotus, I agree with you, they may have to do a quick splash and dash at the end. So we may see a 4th pit stop from the Lotus, which may prove to be problematic, but with the pace advantage those cars have and kind of the comfort we're seeing out of Ben Borman and Becky Ely, it still is a race that's in their hands to win their class. It's just a matter of, again, that consistency being key, and we can tell that Ben Borman and Becky Ely have gotten very comfortable with the setup of the car. We jump back up here to the lead here with Nicholas Kirsten, who is chasing down Wouter de Bruin still. going through, and again, still closing in time. The gap had opened up well over a second. It's now under 0.8 of a second as they continue along. But you can see that Nicholas here is really having to work that wheel of this Ferrari, and it just seems understeery to a degree. It seems like the car, no matter how far the wheel goes, just isn't wanting to obey and go around. You can see here, it feels like the car is just always aiming just to the left of where you would think it would be turning.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the cars, I mean, you look at it, it's a V12 at the front of this 250 GTO, so there's more weight on the front axle, and when you try and coax it through the corners, you would think that the front end weight advantage would be in the hands of the Ferrari, but it's clearly not. I mean, you've got a 289 cubic inch 4.7 litre V8 at the front of that Shelby Daytona, so less mass means that you're going to be able to carry the momentum through the corners a little bit easier in the Shelby Daytona. And plus also the Shelby's got a better red line, so 8,250 RPM versus 7.5k for the Ferrari. So again, it's just a case of, you look at how composed Wouter de Bruyne is behind the wheel of that Shelby Daytona. They're coming up to put a lap down onto JT Tammy, so they've lapped up to up to what will be 13th place at this moment in time on lap 24 out of 56. The additional lap is for the formation lap, folks. There's Kirsten getting late on the brakes there. He's trying to look for an opportunity. Tank slapper happens for the number 115 Ferrari as Wouter de Bruyne still hangs on.
Still holding on as they continue along, but this has closed up significantly for them. This is really heating up, and it's not done yet. There's still plenty of time for this race to go. We're just now hitting lap 25. We haven't hit half race distance yet, so we have plenty of time left in this race today as we continue along, but these two are not leaving each other alone.
No, definitely not. They seem to be magnetised at the moment. It just goes to show the difference in driving styles as sideways goes Wouter de Bruyne out of the final corner. Nicholas Kirsten a little bit nice and neater through there for the Ferrari. Now, does this mean he gets the opportunity of the overspeed, 135, 140 miles an hour? And again, just the amount of power that's in that Shelby Daytona, and you could just see that Wouter de Bruyne just picks the rear out to the left-hand side, the left rear just screaming and burning rubber going through into turn 1. He's doing it again through turn 3 at Millstone turn, and now we go onto the straightaway into Colzante corner very shortly. You can just see how composed Wouter de Bruyne is, even though he knows that JT Tammy and the Corvette C2 Stingray is just up ahead, but he's got to get past him quickly because he does not want Kirsten having an opportunity to get through on him to take the race lead.
He doesn't want him to take the race lead, but the more I watch this, the more I think that it's going to happen. I think that this is just a matter of when, not if. It's just very hard to see through. We've had a third DNF now. So we went from 23 cars to 20, and it's our good friend Robin Mullen. What has happened to Robin? Well, I have a feeling that this is running wide out of a corner, and am I right? We're going to find out really. Let's see. Trying to tell what might have happened. It almost seems like it just stopped. So maybe just a disconnection and air somewhere. Not sure. It's unfortunate, though. That is our third DNF of the race here. Now down to 20 cars to complete the rest of this race distance. Still Wouter de Bruyne up front, and now has opened up over a second gap on Nicholas Kirsten as they continue through 30 laps remaining out.
Yeah, and then we go back to Magnus Dahlgren, who's got through on Becky Ely. And Dahlgren at the moment running P6. Of course, he had that big stop and hold for 55 seconds. But he's managed to make the best of it. And getting up into the air car twice in a row through two respective bumps on the circuit. But now pulling a gap over Becky Ely. Becky Ely currently second in the Div 1-2 Pro class. and she is quite a way back. Make that probably the best part of over 20 seconds away from Ben Borman, who's currently running 5th overall, as Becky Ely again getting very close to the back end of Dahlgren. Dahlgren's Ferrari getting a little bit sideways from time to time. And there you can see that, well, the Lotus B32 Ford Cosworth has got the lowest rev limits out of everything in this field, 5,800 RPM. So literally, as soon as you see it hit around 6 on the rev counter in the middle of the binnacle in front of the steering wheel, then they've got to change up. But you can see then Magnus Dahlgren has gone, bye-bye, Becky, see you later, eat my dust.
It's amazing, though, because watch how Becky's going to just very quickly cast out the fishing line and just reel Dahlgren back in here through this first middle and the turns here. Because look at that, Magnus Dahlgren, as soon as we said, you know what, bye-bye, Becky just goes, no, come back, I wasn't done. We're still racing here, and very quickly is going to start closing this gap through the corners, because this Lotus can handle, and well, maybe I spoke a little too soon. Maybe I commentated cursed it. I shouldn't, speak.
Based on circumstances,
things
you said something and something else happened completely.
Exactly. Isn't that our job, Alex? Isn't it our job to say one thing and speak something else in the universe?
Yeah, from time to time, Brad, it does happen. We've all been a fate of circumstance, whether it be talking about racing, or if some people that do commentate that get behind the wheel, they do also have their own moments on track rather than being in the booth like us at the moment. And you can just see Dahlgren getting a bit sideways happy. Becky Ely wrestling the steering wheel of the Lotus 23B, Ford Cosworth. Had a nice little shot of the blimp overlooking the circuit just a moment ago as well. But one of the other things that I've noticed, that with regards to the Div 3 cars, that when we go over the bumps, they seem to get airborne, whereas the Div 1-2s, because they're a little bit lighter, they don't have that want of launching into the air.
Yeah, but watching the cars launch is so much fun. I'm not going to lie. It is pretty enjoyable to see. Stacy has said in chat, the Porsche's the same way around the track. It won't turn. Having the rear engine hitting the brakes doesn't set the nose like a front engine car does. That's where the Shelby gets the advantage. So that is a very good point, that, you know, the engine specifics, and it's something that Storm Gang has done really well. SGS has done a very good job of modeling in that weight balance, that weight shift, and seeing the difference in the cars. And tracks like this really make it stand out. We might not make it as apparent at, you know, some of our big tracks like Le Mans, Spa, certain tracks where the Div 3s are just going to dominate on power alone. But, you know, the hill climb is one I think of. Kappa Karate hill climb that we ran. Bridgehampton here. It's tracks where you really see the difference in the cars stand out in their characteristics. Front wheel drive, or front engine, rear engine. You see all of those differences in how the handling changes.
And we've also had Wouter de Bruyne pit from the race lead. So he's the first of the Div 3 cars at the sharp end of the field that has decided to pit on half distance. So lap 28. And we've also had and another one of the Div 1-2 cars goes by the wayside this time. Daniel Scott off track, and then it's the same corner again that might cause the problem. He's gone off, rejoins onto the circuit. So just keeping an eye to see whether there's something else that happens, because these cars do carry a lot of momentum through the corners. Goes through now. Is he going to lose the back end whilst accelerating out of the corner? Car gets a little bit of a tank slapper. Then it's into the next left. And yeah, it's whether he's had a possible disconnect as well. So yeah, it's not been an easy one. The Div 1-2s. Oh, there he goes. Oh, he's got into the greenery and he's gone flying. And I think that's another front end impact. These Div 1-2s don't like the front end impact. He goes off the circuit and then bang, hits the fence right front. Gets absolutely mullered.
Yeah, there's no coming back from that one either. That is just a case of you are done. Pack it up, send it to the scrapyard, and just get a new car for the next race. But again, thankfully, these are virtual cars, so no money is lost and no risk of missing the next race. Unlike sometimes the way it is and was in real life if things are a little bit too severe. Continue along now, lap 30 of 56, Alex. Nicholas here in the Ferrari up in the lead is trying to stretch legs. Look at the gap to Timon Subic, though, but Timon is in the pits there as we go, and we can see that Nicholas is just kind of stretching the Ferrari's legs here. I think that little bit of clean air, not having Wouter de Bruin ahead, is just giving a bit of time for Nicholas to really get going. The gap, 58.7 seconds. Is that enough time for a pit stop and to retain the lead? We're going to find out.
Yeah, well, Wouter de Bruin trying to get a handle back on the number 19 rookie monster Shelby Daytona. Ben Borman has just pitted for the second time in this race on lap 30. So we are looking at a three-stop strategy for Ben Borman. He's just come out. But, I mean, the thing is that in comparison with the Giulias and the Porsches in the Div 1 and 2s, it's only 12 seconds to fill a 7-gallon tank. So they'll be very, very quick pit stops. Whereas you look at the Giulias and the Porsches, 33 for the Giulia with a 100-litre tank. That's 20 gallons. 22 gallons, so 110 litres for the Porsche 904s. That's 37 seconds. So it may be the case that Ben Borman and Becky Ely could be the two dark horses. And it's going to be quite crucial. Nicholas Kirsten is now in the pits. Here is Bradley Sellers and Luca Tavernari. And this is the battle for 6th out on the road. And then, of course, you've got to look at the how long it's going to take for Nicholas Kirsten. That's 133 litres as Bradley Sellers goes off track. Tavernari has a bit of a tank slapper whilst trying to avoid clattering into the back of the 93. That's very, very close between the Daytona Shelby and also the Alfa Romeo Giulia TZ. And once again, just these... this is what has been rather enthralling, that when we see a Division 1-2 car versus a Division 3 car in the sections where the former gets the jump on the latter, and now this is where the straight line speed comes into play. Tavernari accelerating full throttle in 4th gear, 120 miles an hour, and I would imagine that Bradley Sellers is probably north of 145 heading underneath the Bridgehampton Bridge.
As they continue along here, Nicholas Kirsten came out of the pits behind De Bruin by 2 seconds. So we do have a little bit of a gap there. So Nicholas Kirsten waiting that extra lap to pit in has lost some time to De Bruin there. Gap 2.1 seconds. We'll see how that closes up as we go. And we follow along Luca Tavernari here. And as you pointed out, Alex, the Div 3, the Div 1-2 cars, it almost doesn't. That's an Alpine around. That's the number 21. That is going to be Scar Pope, who is around off the side of the circuit there and just very politely sits, waits, and rejoins in. And I wouldn't think that was contact. I don't know what would have caused that, honestly.
No, but in the meantime, battle for the Div 1-2 overall lead. Ben Borman, 7.5 tenths ahead of Daniel Hurlock. And you can see now that the Alpha's trying to get the legs on the Lotus 23B. Oh, Hurlock goes a bit too deep into the corner, spins up the rear wheels whilst out braking himself. And again, we saw great battles in the Div 1-2 classes between the class win and also 3rd and 4th at Monza last time out. So again, we're seeing these strategies come into play, but also look at it from this perspective. I'm trying to remember the last time that we saw when we saw the Alphas go into the pit lane, but Ben Borman knows that he's got another stop to do. Hurlock knows that he's going to have another stop to do. So I'm wondering whether we're going to get to that point. I saw, Ben Borman pit on lap 30 out of 56 as Hurlock completely sideways and still kept it pinned. Now on the brakes, now on the gas. Oh my goodness me, Herlock is trying to fight that Alpha along with fighting Borman, who's holding onto that race lead.
These Div 1, 2, and Div 3 interclass battles are not going to stop, and I absolutely love it. This is probably going to go in my book as one of the best races of the season. We'll have to table that one till the end of the season, but I'm going to go ahead and tentatively say it, that this might become my favorite race of the season, of a long season of action as we go through. Dan Herlock, again, continuing along here. 9/10 of a second there to Borman. Has lost a little bit of time. Borman's got to put the throttle down, though, with multiple pit stops left. But again, Dan Herlock runs wide there, and every time Dan Herlock runs a little wide there is going to be losing out just a bit of time. And the other thing that I'm noticing is that behind Dan Herlock here is Bradley Sellers. Bradley Sellers 1.9 seconds back, and Luca Tavernari just behind that. Those are the drivers we were watching just a few moments ago before we jumped to this battle, and they are just right there. A stone's throw away. You could, I don't know, I don't have a funny saying for that, but just a stone's throw away right behind as they continue along. They continue on, and we'll see how those gaps continue to flex along, because now Bradley Sellers, again, this is where the Div 3 stretches their legs. They go through, and it's like you're standing still if you're Dan Herlock, but thankfully for Dan Herlock at least, holds on to the position for another moment, sends that car sideways, is really trying to push to keep up with the loads here.
Yeah, and the gap between him and Borman has now expanded to just north of a second. At one point it was nearly 1.2 between Borman in the number 46 Lotus 23B and then Herlock in the 87 Julia TZ. And again, it's just a case of it ebbs and flows. It's like a pendulum swing. And to be honest with you, in about 12 laps time is when we'll see Ben Borman, I think, pit for the last time this race. Becky Ely holding on to 4th position in the Div 1-2 Pro class. She is about 10.5 seconds ahead of Oliver Day in the 808 Porsche, but she is quite a way behind Luca Tavernari, who still holds on to P3 in the class 6th overall. As look at the wiggle from Bradley Sellers, following the wiggle from Daniel Herlock, and the gap now is somewhat come down to about 8.5 of a second between the Div 1-2 Pro class leaders. Peter Meyer has just come into pit lane, the leading Div 3 AM in the Chevy Corvette here on lap number 34 out of 56. And again, you can just see, oh my goodness, Herlock just seems to like braking traction on the rear just to keep that Alpha on the black stuff. And the same could be said for Bradley Sellers, who again is going to close that gap. You can just see how fast that Shelby Daytona is on a straight line. There he goes through on Herlock, and now Borman, and that's given a tow to Herlock, who's got that gap down to 4/10 heading into T1.
Now we'll see if Herlock can take advantage. Wow! Just look at the run there. Sellers runs very wide, and now Borman's just right in the mix. Herlock's right on the rear end here, and this is the point where the Div 1-2s are faster. So this is where we're really going to see the pressure here. Herlock trying to look inside, look outside, look around, do what Herlock can to get a pass through. Not able to get that pass on Borman, but now Borman's looking and kind of saying, okay, Bradley Sellers, you got past me. I need you to go. I need you to move. I need you to do something, because you're just putting pressure on me from behind here, and I'm faster right now. It's very interesting to see the way this track ebb and flows through, and they continue along here. We jump on board with Ben Borman, who is very much just pedal to the metal. Don't look in the mirrors, just look ahead, try to follow that Div 3 around, and just try to stick through. Again, Bradley Sellers runs wide, rejoins. Ben Borman's going to have the momentum. Is Herlock behind going to follow around? Well, it's going to look the long way around the outside. You can see him just there in the mirror. Now we jump to the outside shot, and here's Herlock is going to take the outside to the inside as they go through, and look at the block from Bradley Sellers. He says, no thank you, I'll go back past now. I'm faster than you, we're on a straightaway, and I need to go ahead and get this car moving forward. That Shelby Daytona very much trying to go through, but man, look at how much it slows down through. As I think that was Birds that just went in front of our picture.
Yeah, it was.
And
here comes Herlock to the inside. It's wheel to wheel with Borman. Herlock's going to get the run into T1 and 2, but is he going to get the slipstream? Not quite enough. He decides to use discretion as the better part of valor through into turn 1 and turn 2. Cuts onto the dirt, keeps it pinned. Oh my goodness. Pair of stones on Dan Herlock right there. My godfathers, that was incredible commitment from the Alfa Romeo and the 87. And what this could mean is that these two keep on battling that like they are. That's going to allow Luca Tavanari to close up rather quickly. Tavanari is still within earshot, about 2.6 seconds behind.
Yeah, and Tavanari will just be kind of watching this. He'll have the info that it's happening ahead, and just basically it's head down, it's consistency, it's quick, good, stable laps that we need. And everyone behind them is setting personal best sectors. So drivers are, I mean, they're opening up the wheels right now. They are really smashing the throttle. They are finding time where time is to be found right now. Lap 35 of 56, and I feel like we're on the final lap every time these cars come around because they are not done. Look at this again. We go through the hairpin and look at how much Ben Borman is catching Bradley Sellers. Yet again they go through, and that's going to be a C2 Corvette pulling out of the way there to the right-hand side. Side by side go Ben Borman and Dan Herlock. Dan Herlock will have the advantage ahead. Over the hill they go. Herlock's going to hold on. Borman's a little bit braver on the brakes in that Lotus. The Lotus a little bit lighter and able to take advantage of the turn. And for another lap, Ben Borman will cross the line ahead of Dan Herlock. But by how much? And can he hold it through turn 1? Down the main straight we go. And Alex, I might cover my eyes at this point because this is getting very, very feisty, very, very fast.
Well, we were doing that quite a lot of the time when we were racing at Monza last time out. And that just goes to show how ultra competitive these drivers are. It doesn't matter what track you throw at them, it doesn't matter what car they're in, they are going to put on a show every single time. Now, looking at the gap between second and third in the Div 1-2 class, Tavanari now 2 seconds. It was 2.6 at one point. We did have a brief yellow in sector number 2. We've got a yellow out again, so some drivers probably getting a little bit exhausted with the strains of this particular circuit. And I think it was just been informed it was Alexander Schultz, so we're going to go to the Champion Motorsports replay. Alexander Schultz trying to pass one of the Div 1-2 cars. Looks to be one of the Porsches. Oh, goes off. Oh, that Ferrari's completely off exit stage right, and he's gone through into the greenery.
I don't even think that was into the fence. I think that was over the fence. We're right on board here. And ladies and gentlemen, please fasten your seatbelts. We are cleared for takeoff, through, on the fence, over the fence. And adios.
Oh, that's like a World Rally Championship accident that's gone completely through into the trees. And yeah, that's a... I thought we were going to see airborne. It's like, yeah, Delta 19, cleared. Please let me know if we're cleared for takeoff. Manages to get the car back out onto track. So, yeah, that was definitely a roller coaster. That was for sure.
That was, I mean, I didn't know Ferrari, their cars doubled as airplanes, but, every manufacturer kind of has their side hobby. For Lamborghini, it's tractors, and I guess for Ferrari, it's going to be flying cars. A glimpse into our future as we go. Borman and Herlock are still separated bumper to bumper here. 2.5 tenths separates them in the lead for Div 1-2. Lap 37 out of 56 has been ran here in the Div 3. It's De Bruin over Nicholas Kirsten. 1.1 seconds, 1 second now as they go through Div 3 It's Meyer and Mayer as they continue along. And then in Div 1-2 your only running driver is Adam Gray, as Eric Monet has DNF'd. We've also lost Dan Scott, Robin Mulling, and Pierre Moreno at different points through this race. So we are down to 19 cars remaining on track as they go in 37 to 56. I'm not going to even try to do the mental math on that. I'll let James tell me how many laps are left in my ear.
I think that means we've got 19, including this one. So it is going to be the case of just getting the car to the finish. And if you could do that, you'll have thought, oh, Monza was a tough one. They'll say Bridgehampton was a tough one. And then we've still got 2 more to go, especially with Paris being the season finale. But Yeah, right, okay. Bradley Sellers closing in on Daniel Hurlock and Ben Boorman again as the number 93 Shelby Daytona rounds out the top 5, rounds out the top 3 in Div 3 at the moment. So I think it's going to be maybe a case of shutting your eyes again very, very soon, Brad, because those 3 are really very much inseparable at this moment in time.
It's been amazing how much they've ran through, and look at this. This is Boorman and Hurlock in I want to shout out very quickly in YouTube chat. Go Ben representing the skateboard. I didn't know we were calling the Lotus the skateboard, but I like it. It fits. It fits very well, and look at this. This is Boorman trying to hold off Hurlock. Hurlock hard on the brakes, trying to go through, and look, Bradley Sellers behind them. Sellers has lost time and is back behind now. This is, it kind of, I don't know, this is almost moot to a point because we know Boorman has at least one more, if not 2 more pit stops through. So I kind of wonder, is this battle just for fun at this point, or is this actually for our class win? Somebody can double check me on that. I believe that this is almost just a battle for fun. I don't know if Boorman's going to be able to pull out enough through the remaining pit stop cycles.
Well, the thing is that, Tavanari's just had an off track. That was a big one for the number 37 Alfa Romeo in 3rd place of the Div 1-2 battle. Yeah, I mean, Ben Boorman, I would say, is probably going to pit either lap 44 or 45, and then we'll have enough fuel plus a little bit of oversight just in case. But this battle could be taking a lot more fuel out of the Lotus 23B whilst battling away with Hurlock. You know, it's all about, as I said, it's about the brakes, it's about the throttle modulation, you know, carrying the momentum through the corners. And if you're good at modulating the throttle in these 1964 sports cars, going through corners, you know, the more modulation you use, the less fuel you're going to potentially use as well. But if you're going to be a bit too haphazard on the throttle, like you can see with Hurlock, who's gone completely sideways through 3, and he's kept the slide going. That was very, very well held. Tavanari's now started to come back into this a little bit, and he's only 1.2 seconds, well, maybe 1.2, 1.3 off of Bradley Sellers, who in turn is 0.8 off of Daniel Hurlock. So this puts Tavanari about 2.1 seconds behind 2nd place, but now Hurlock's starting to lose time to Boorman, who's closing in on another back marker that's coming up very shortly.
Yeah, and as we continue to watch the back markers come in, they're not, again, with the pace, the back markers I don't think are making as much of an impact on battles as we thought they would. Traditionally, when we see these class battles, you can get completely stuck behind a Div 1-2 car and just absolutely mess up your day. But Neil Wood here in the 151 really isn't that far off the pace, is running very smooth and consistent, is going to move over, make room, get out of the way, but isn't necessarily going to be off the pace to the cars around. Is, you know, just running nice and smooth through, running similar times to everybody else. And Bradley Sellers is still putting in great lap times through there in 5th. Just on that yellow car on the edge of your screen, you can see
Hurlock
goes through, powers on the straight.
I thought Hurlock might have ended up going right into the pit lane. Of course, the Alfa Romeo's yet to make their 2nd pit stop, but the 2 Lotuses have already done theirs. So yeah, and now you can see that Hurlock's just got off big time through at T2 into 3. Oh, that was definitely a clean up on R3, and again he's gone sideways, and Sellers is through on him now. So this gives Ben Boorman a little bit of breathing room.
You can Amazon Prime overnight fresh underwear if you need it, Dan Hurlock. I have a feeling a lot of the drivers are going to be needing it after this race. A lot of them have had very close near-miss moments.
Yeah, some a bit more significant than others, let's say, shall we?
It's been one after another, and it's hard to believe that we're already 40 of 56 through this race as we go. Dan Hurlock still on the back of Bradley Sellers here, going through Oliver Day in the Porsche 904s in the pits. Dan Herlock again running a little wide here. Dan Herlock is absolutely motoring this Alfa Romeo and really, really demanding the pace out of it. And it's been amazing how it's kept up here, right on the back of Bradley Sellers, again running a little loose here. And Bradley Sellers just kind of powers away out of the corner. He's slow in the corners, but out of the corner, he's able to power away.
Yeah, that's been the big thing. It's just trying to get the car working. I mean, we're nearly at that point of 200 kilometers, at around about lap 44 would have broken 200 kilometers. But there we go, Herlock in the pits. Herlock in the pits is going to be the last stop for him. Tavanari probably would say maybe lap 42 or 43 will pit for the final time. But then it will be another 4 laps before we see Ben Borman, maybe 3 or 4 laps absolute maximum for the Lotus 23B. So Ben Borman's now going to start putting qualifying style laps in. His last lap was a 44.9. Tavanari's was a 45.3. Herlock was a high 44.8, and he's dropped behind Becky Ely. So now it's going to be a case of how do these last set of pit stops in Div 1, 2 sort out the top 3.
It's gonna, you might as well just take them, toss them around in a cup, and throw them out like you would playing Yahtzee with dice. It's gonna be very interesting to see where they go through. I'm wanting to try to double check myself and see what the qualifying time was for those glorious skateboards, as they've been called. I'm gonna have to call them skateboards every time I see them. It's going to be real interesting to see. For context, Becky Ely's qualifying time was a 1:44.1, was both Becky Ely and Ben Borman. So those are the times that we're going to need to see from them to really see those Lotuses come into their own. Right now, your class leaders, as it stands, it is Ben Borman in the lead. For how long, I don't know, as Tavanari's behind there, and of course is going to have to pit and come out here at some point. Herlock now down in the 24 seconds back. We know the Lotus has a somewhat quicker of a pit stop. De Bruin still in the lead over Nicholas Kirsten by 8/10 of a second. That's been fluctuating a bit. Again, Gray, the only runner in Div 1-2 AM, and in Div 3 AM, it is Meyer over Mayer by 74 seconds.
That's incredible when you think about it. But yeah, I mean, the cars have just gotten quicker and quicker throughout the race, and it just goes to show that these drivers are not shy from pushing the limits of adhesion and also the performance of their vehicles, as we've seen time and time again all the way through this virtual 1964 Virtual World Sports Car Championship. And there we go through on the 88 of John Mayer. And good to see that both Div 3 AM cars are still running, so they're still going to secure points in the championship heading into the final 2 rounds. But yeah, I think this has given Ben Borman the opportunity he needs, and he has now got a 4.5 second lead over Luca Tavanari, who could be inbound into pit road very shortly. I think maybe on this lap, because we're on 43 out of 56.
Yeah, and as we continue along here, Ben Borman just very comfortably running pace, running along here. De Bruin is opening up the gap to Kirsten. We're in the closing stages here, and this is the point where I think survival mode kicks in. It really becomes that sort of fight or flight moment for some drivers. Some drivers really tend in the final laps to find that pace, and I don't know if that's just a fact that you've ran so many laps of the track at this point, you really know where your limits are, if it's just you kind of throw caution to the wind at the end and you really start to push. Some drivers do really well, and some drivers, the end is really just about, okay, I've given so much in the beginning, I've just got to get to the end, whatever it takes, even if it means, I'm a second a lap slower, you're just to the end. And again, this is a Herculean effort from all of these drivers. We see how much the cars move around. We see how much they're fighting the handling. We see how much this track specifically can cause these cars to really not have a good time. And it's got to be commended that all of the drivers are making it through, even if you've DNF'd here. I mean, just showing up, putting in the practice, putting in the qualifying, the warm-up, and taking the green flag itself was a big effort. And hats off to everyone running through. We continue around now. When is Ben Borman going to pit?
That's the big $64,000 question that's got to be answered very, very shortly, I'm sure. But we have now hit effectively 200 kilometers of racing so far. Nicholas Kirsten closing in on Wouter de Bruyne. Oh, they're back at it again. That gap is coming down. It's around about 7/10 of a second as we go on to lap 44 out of 56. So 15 to go. And I think Wouter de Bruyne has got to have his eyeballs on a swivel right about now.
Eyeballs on a swivel, but again, it's one thing to catch, it's another to pass. I keep saying it's a matter of when, not if, and I'm starting to think it's a matter of if, not when. The more this race has gone on, the closer they've been and the farther they've been. It's just, it's there, it's set up, it's right in your grasp, and it's just, the pass hasn't happened yet, and I can't really decide why, other than understeer versus oversteer, and that's an interesting thing for me to see. It's very unusual for me to see a driver such as Nicholas Kirsten, who I feel is the faster driver right now, but just isn't able to make the pass happen.
Plus also, another thing that we talked about at Monza was the fact that the Shelby Daytona has the lowest amount of fuel in the cars, 108 litres when they're fully tanked. The Ferrari 250 GTOs have 133 litres. As now Kirsten trying to get through on De Bruyne. This could be very, very close indeed. De Bruyne gets sideways. Kirsten tries to dive towards the left-hand side of the circuit. And once again, De Bruyne just able to line that car up straight, put the hammer down and pull away from the Ferrari. But again, you're just seeing how much in control Wouter de Bruyne is. Oh, Kirsten comes out of the final corner, goes two wheels on the sand, and more to the point, well, he's trying to do what he can to get through on Wouter de Bruyne, but does not have the slipstream that he needs.
Just, again, right there, but can't make the difference. Can't make it happen. The gap's half a second as they go, and look at the bump through turn 2 that De Bruyne takes. And it floats that car down through turn 2, helps them pull a little bit of a gap as they go. I mean, he is doing everything right and just being consistent. He may not be the fastest of these two cars, but by golly, he is the most consistent and is holding on to it.
Yeah, by the skin of the paint on the rear bumper, I might add here, Brad. But here comes Nicholas Kirsten up the inside, and he gets through. But will Wouter de Bruyne counter-attack? He tries, and Kirsten defends and holds on to the race lead on lap 45 out of 56. We've got a race on our hands, and as I say that, Ben Borman has come in and served what will be his final pit stop of the race on lap 45, it looked like.
He has come in, he's came through, and now he's behind Becky Ely. We're right on board with De Bruyne here, who looks like starting to struggle on tire wear potentially, and really starting to feel the effects of that. Sliding the car around, hard on the throttle in the Shelby Daytona here, trying to run things along and move things forward, and really, really trying to get past that Ferrari. I feel like the whole season has been a case of the Shelby versus the Ferrari.
Yeah.
Not saying I've seen that somewhere, but just saying that that's kind of how the season's been. It's a storybook for the ages.
Especially a storybook we've got right now. But Wouter de Bruyne closing in on Nicholas Kirsten, sideways through T1. He's going to touch the sand. He's got to have to wrestle with that steering wheel. Yellow out in sector number 2, as again Wouter de Bruyne trying to close in that gap to Nicholas Kirsten, and it seems like the boot is on the other foot. And it could have been Elko Bussink that might have just brought out the yellow flag in sector 2. Here comes the replay. Off goes the 47, tracking on the sand, then through the grass. All gets a little bit of a wiggle. Does he hold it? Yes, he does.
And hard on the brakes with the 82 behind. Here's Bradley Sellers having a bit of a moment as well, running things through. We've seen Bradley Sellers sliding that Daytona around and really trying to do what he can. It looks like this time the car just kind of said, no, we're not doing that this lap. We're gonna just stay in a straight line this lap.
Yeah, the tyres have said, we have had enough. We protest.
Continue along here. Lap 46 of 56. We're within 10 to go here. De Bruin half a second off of Kirsten, and 47 seconds back is Sellers here. Sellers trying to run through. That's the number 4 running extremely wide there. That number 4 C2 Corvette. And
JT Tammy going off to
Tammy.
Yeah. Oh, dearie me. That was a bit of a Code Brown moment there for the Chevy driver. But yeah, Bradley Sellers now manages to gather back up the Smart Power Racing number 93 Shelby Daytona. And 10 laps to go. So our leaders have crossed the line. Wouter de Bruin is within 3 and a bit tenths of a second off of Nicholas Kirsten as Bradley Sellers goes off again. But manages this time not to spin up the rear tyres, so he doesn't do a 180. Oh my goodness me, this is getting a bit dicey at the front end of the field.
Don't go anywhere. Don't do anything. If you're in YouTube chat, if you're joining us in here for this historic race, lap 47 to 56 here around Bridgehampton, we go for the 250 kilometers of Bridgehampton, which equates out to 55 laps plus a formation lap. We continue through. Nicholas Kirsten just taking the lead a few laps ago over Wouter de Bruin. Borman in the lead ahead of Herlock by 25 seconds. Ben Borman, I believe, has done his final pit stop and is done, though. So I think that lead is official. Ross Smith is up into 5th place in class, but the big story battle right now, this Div 3 battle between Kirsten and De Bruin here, the comeback from Sellers to be up into 3rd. We've had some big story moments. We've lost 4 drivers along the way. Dan Scott, Robin Mullen, Eric Monet, and Pierre Moreno are 4 DNFs throughout the race. A couple of them deciding to just completely jump the sand dunes here around this Bridgehampton circuit. We continue along, though, and we're watching Bradley Sellers try to keep his car on track. He's doing a fairly good job now that we're watching him. As soon as we cut away, though, he's going to decide to start playing the drift theme as he continues. Dahlgren and Smith battling it out. 0.6 of a second separate them. Ross Smith, they're 5th in class, and Magnus Dahlgren 6th in class. Dahlgren really with a power slide and runs it just a bit wide, and well, that is going to stabilize that battle before it could really get going.
Yeah, we could also have a little bit of an interesting battle for 2nd place in Div 1-2 overall. As between Daniel Herlock, Becky Ely and Luca Tavanari, the gap is 2.7 seconds covering those 3 drivers, and there they are. So there is Becky Ely. She's bringing that gap down to around 0.8 of a second behind Daniel Herlock, and in the meantime dropping Luca Tavanari in the number 37 Alfa Romeo Giulia TZ like a little bit of a bad habit. And more to the point that Becky Ely, again, this could be the opportunity that the Lotus 23B Ford could pick up a welcome 1-2 as Tavanari goes very, very much off track, kicks up the sand onto the circuit and loses a bit more time to Becky Ely. The gap between them was about 1.7, 1.8 seconds at its highest. It's around 1.6 at the moment.
Yeah, and that would be huge for the team standings, as right now those Lotus 23Bs of Borman and Ely are 59.65 points in 3rd place. In 2nd place is Mike Bell Motorsports at 77. Joy Motorsports is in the lead of the Div 1-2s of 78 points. So that would be a huge haul of points for them in the team standings. Could really prove to be beneficial for the Lotuses if they can pull that 1-2 here in Div 1-2. And Becky Ely just needs to push a little bit more. We're coming down with 7 laps to go as it stands, and look at Herlock sending that car to the inside, goes to the outside, taps the brakes in for 3, is trying to hold on to it, but Becky Ely, that Lotus, stable, consistent, smooth, and Becky Ely putting the pressure down here as we continue along. It might be the smallest car, might have the smallest fuel tank, but it is a feisty car when you get it through twisty technical sections. It's where this car shines as it runs through around here. Herlock trying to hold on at the moment. Up front, the battle between De Bruin and Kirsten has stabilized out. It's 4.4 seconds the gap now. De Bruin having a moment and losing a lot of time there in that 2nd place, and I believe that could be all she wrote up front as long as Nicholas can keep that car smooth. But here, as you pointed out, Alex, it could be a 1-2 in Div 1-2.
I think the thing is that's a moment there for Herlock. That is not what you wanted to do at this later stage of the race. Losing the back end, going onto the sand, it's going to compromise all four wheels, depending if all four wheels went off track, which in the case of Herlock it clearly did. So Becky Ely and Ben Borman have had the full attack strategy. Just go as quickly as the car will and just try and capitalize on others making mistakes. And Herlock completely sideways, nice and neat and tidy from Becky Ely, coming out of turn number 11 and down the main stretch they go and across the stripe. So that's going to put us on to lap 49 out of 56, so 7 to go including this one. This is very much a case of not if, but when does Becky Ely make the move on Dan Herlock for that second place. And there goes Herlock off circuit again, through out of turn number 3. My godfathers, Herlock is really having to push the envelope to keep Becky Ely at bay, and he's paying with it by losing time through certain parts of the circuit here, Brad.
Yeah, and somehow Herlock stays ahead here. Becky Ely, very smooth, consistent. She's looking very, very comfortable. I say it again, very, very comfortable here in the Lotus around this track. I think the move is going to be either turn 4 or turn 9 is where I would say it's going to be Colasante Corner or the hairpin. One of those two places I would think is where Becky Ely will really make the move. We're coming through turn 7 and now turn 8. And I believe that once we hit the hairpin here, really that's where, if I'm Becky Ely, I'd be making a dive to the inside, send it through, make it stick, or it's got to be through turn 1, 2, 3, and 4. It's one of those two sections. And basically, I just named half the track. So really, anywhere there's a right-hand turn, I think is where Becky Ely can make a pass. I guess is the simplest way to phrase that as we go. But the time is very, very limited at this point for Becky Ely. Needs to find it, and Herlock, I think, needs to dial it down 1 to 2%. As that is somebody off. That's the number
Magnus
89.
Dahlgren, possibly. Yeah, I think that was Dahlgren. Gonna have a look at a replay. And this is going to be, just snakes under braking, loses the back end. Hits the fence with the left-hand side of the car. And Dahlgren very, very lucky. He didn't go any further airborne, but Becky Ely has got through on Dan Herlock, who's gone off again. Becky Ely actually was pulling to the right-hand side, coming out of turn 11, and Herlock goes off again. Tavanari does that. I'm not too sure if that's a sympathy go off circuit by Tavanari behind his teammates at Mike Bell Motorsports, but yeah, again it was a case of when, and Becky Ely saw her chance coming out of turn 11 and made it count.
Now it's a matter of holding it to the end, which you can argue might be the easier way to go, might be the harder way to go. You might want to be the one being chased instead of chasing here. Becky Ely trying to bring home the 1-2 with Boardman having a 29-second advantage here on Becky Ely, the teammate here, going through their P5 and P7 overall. And there is Herlock again kicking out the rear end. Bradley Sellers is into the pits here with just a few laps to go. Is that splash and dash for the Shelby Daytona? Is that boat a problem for Wouter de Bruin? Does that mean we're going to see any more last-second pit stops in Div 3?
Yeah, it was the same at Monza. The Shelbys had the pace, but the fuel capacity was not on their side again. And that's just been the case for Bradley Sellers. He's still, he's got to hope and pray for a miracle right about now. He has got the fastest lap of the race, but now Daniel Herlock finds himself, what is that going to be, half a second behind Becky Ely, who's now just keeping things very nice and clean. 5 laps to go here on lap 52, and Herlock's gone off again, and Tavanari's done exactly the same thing. It seems like he's definitely got a doppelganger, and it's his teammate behind him going off at the same points on the circuit. But this is not going to help Herlock at all in the battle for second place with Becky Ely.
Mike Bell Motorsports running identical lines there, both in the Alfa Romeos. They're mirroring each other at this point as they run along. It kind of doesn't surprise me considering they're teammates, but it's also one of those sort of moments where you kind of have to do a double take and make sure you don't just see the same car twice. They go through Herlock, still losing pace to Becky Ely. The gap now 9/10 of a second, almost to a 1 second gap, but that will be a moment of really just rest and relaxation for Becky Ely at that point. Yellow flag out in Sector 2 as we still see the Mike Bell Motorsport cars running wide as they go. Get a replay here of what happened. This is that number 47 of Busink. And what has happened to Busink? Well, Busink has sunk it wide.
Oh, and the car's completely all over the shop, sideways through the corner. And is that going to pirouette? Oh, that's exactly where we saw Bradley Sellers lose it and end up 180 degrees pointing in the wrong direction.
Thankfully, nobody around, no harm, no foul. Single car spin. They continue along, and now we jump in. That is Ross Smith putting a lap on Elko Busink as we continue along here. Busink running down the field quite a bit here in P14 overall. Just 19 cars still running here at lap 53 of 56. We started with a grid of 23. We're down to 19, and Busink still, it seems like, struggling with that car. I would imagine that the tires look like Goodyear NASCAR tires after Bristol. They are absolutely shredded, run through, they are gone, and it's probably just a miracle that the cars are staying on track at this point for several drivers. Back behind Busink here, there is Becky Ely and Dan Herlock and Tavernari that were just back in the rear edge of earshot, so they are coming up thick and fast here.
Yeah, Herlock's got that gap down to under 0.3 of a second. Tavernari's about 9/10 behind. They've got one of the Corvettes in between Herlock and Tavernari, but Herlock just trying to close on in. Maybe Herlock might be sizing up a potential move coming out of the final corner and into the main stretch onto the start-finish line. It just goes to show that, again, you cannot discount anything from happening, as we have seen in the 1964 Virtual World Sports Car Championship. And here at Bridgehampton, we just had a story that anyone might think, well, you must have written that. No, we ripped up the script before we even gotten started. And you can just see how much more composed Becky Ely is in comparison with Dan Herlock. As Busink off again. Oh, dearie me. Clean up on aisle 3 for the number 47. And is this going to give Herlock the opportunity? He nearly makes it 3 wide. He nearly does make it 3 wide. Goes to the left-hand side of Becky Ely down the start-finish stretch. But Becky Ely holds her ground perfectly.
Becky Ely throwing the elbows out with a beautiful defense there. Holds on to the position, back in the back. Tavernari again running off track. Dan Herlock right on the back here. Becky Ely trying to take away that 1-2 here for the Lotuses as we go through lap 54 of 56. And there is Becky Ely putting a little bit of a slide in on the car. Dan Herlock responding with a slide of his own here, holding on to it, a little bit of a wiggle, and now Becky Ely will shuffle to block. This battle is far from over, and it won't be over till the checkered flag goes.
Yes, after this we'll have 2 to go, and well, Nicholas Kirsten leading by 9.1 seconds ahead of Wouter de Bruyne, and yeah, it's just getting closer and closer as the laps and the corners count down here at Bridgehampton. What has been a fantastic race. All Tavernari's just lost big time distance again, so that really is going to curtail his opportunity. Oh, he's lost it completely though, as Stacey saying let's go Becky in the battle for P2 between Becky Ely and Daniel Herlock. As Lotus look very good for a 1-2. Here's another replay. Oh, this is how Tavernari lost it where we saw the incident with Pierre Moreno, and also the 151 of Neil Wood early doors in the race. So that's why Luca Tavernari now finds himself nearly 4.8 seconds back. But still, time left remaining. Lap 55 of 56, so 2 to go, including this one. And Herlock now knows they've been counting the laps down, and Herlock knows that he's got about probably the best part of 7.5, 8 kilometers left to go to try and put one up on Becky Ely. But she is holding her ground magnificently at the moment in the Friterigo Monsters Lotus 23B.
Going through here, Becky Ely knows it's all about that defense into turn one, and we could see on that last lap, Becky Ely very, very cleanly defending the inside line. De Bruin in for a 10-second pit stop. That surely has to be a splash and dash, and that will absolutely settle in that Div 3 battle. The Shelbys yet again having the fuel mileage be at their disadvantage. We go through with this Div 1-2 battle continuing along. Becky Ely, Dan Herlock, still 0.3 of a second. Becky Ely is trying to stretch this gap a little bit, trying to find a little bit of time through this middle sector of the lap, this middle portion of the lap as we go, coming back around the right-hander. Yet again, we're looking, and Dan Herlock losing more time now. Gap half a second. It is starting to close a little bit. Becky Ely a little bit slower on corner exit here, but it is that defense into turn one that is really making the difference for them. They come up the hill, down the hill, hard on the brakes, yet again into the right-hander we go, and now down onto the main straight for one last attempt here for Dan Herlock to try to find something. That's Ross Smith up ahead. Will be giving just a little bit of a draft, but not a lot here. If any at all, we go through Dan Herlock. Becky Ely's going to defend the middle line here and force Dan Herlock to run wide if he wants to pass through the outside. He's not able to go there. Hard on the brakes. There we go. And one more time there. Becky Ely defending very well, Alex.
Yeah, we're on to the final lap of the race here for the 250 kilometres of Bridgehampton here for the 1964 Virtual World Sports Car Championship through Champion Sim Racing presented by Storm Gang Simulation. But this has been a titanic battle for the ages. When Daniel Herlock loses a bit more time, I think now that's put it out of reach for him to take second away from Becky Ely, but there's still corners remaining. Meantime, however, Nicholas Kirsten has a 33.1 second lead over Wouter de Bruyne for the overall race victory, nearly 50% of the way through the lap of our overall race leaders. Nicholas Kirsten doing that great overtake over Wouter de Bruyne with about 10 laps to go. Made it stick. De Bruyne having to serve a second pit stop for splash and dash, just like we saw with Bradley Sellers, who's going to be 16 seconds off of the overall podium for Div 3. But we are coming down to the wire. Becky Ely now 7/10. She's got breathing room, and that's going to help her to take second place. But meantime, we're not that far away from our overall race leader, Nicholas Kirsten, who's not that far away from getting towards the final couple of corners and is going to take the checkered here at Bridgehampton.
Yeah, we come across the line here, going through. Becky Ely will be defending from Dan Herlock, but it is Nicholas Kirsten here who will fend off Wouter de Bruyne. 35 seconds is the gap in the end, and Nicholas Kirsten will win here at Bridgehampton today after 250 kilometers. Ben Borman with 30 seconds. The gap will bring it home against Becky Ely, with teammates pulling out the 1-2 here as they go along. Still has a considerable amount of time here in the lap to finish out, but is going to be your Div 1-2 winner once they cross the line. It looks like we still have about one more lap left to go for the rest of the field, so we almost were up for Nicholas Kirsten to lap that battle we were watching with Becky Ely and Dan Herlock. Was not that far off, but bringing it across the line we go. That is just how much the pace difference changed throughout this race. Everyone dialing in, the tires wearing out, and it caused a lot of moments through this race. So they're coming through. They'll take the checkered flag momentarily here. Ben Borman now around the final corner. We have had our Div 3 AM winner, Peter Meyer, take the checkered flag down a couple of laps, and our Div 1-2 solo runner at the finish line of Adam Gray took the win as well in class there, P19 as it stands. But Dan Herlock not able to get the pass done on Becky Ely again as they go, so it will be a 1-2 for the Lotuses.
Bradley Sellers was slow. Bradley Sellers was slow. He's run out of fuel.
No.
He's running out of fuel. It's sputtering to a stop. And it's hustle between Becky Ely and Daniel Herlock coming across the line. And Ely takes second place in the class by 0.2 of a second. And look at this, that's Luca Tavanari pushing a fuel-stricken Bradley Sellers, and then here comes Elko Bussink for good measure. They're going to make sure that Bradley Sellers crosses the line, being assisted, as opposed to saying, that's an embarrassing position to be in for Brad Sellers. I really feel for him.
Thankfully, they are going to get him across the line, so no DNFs will be had here. This is very reminiscent of the King and Lightning McQueen going across. Maybe a bit more body work on both of those cars, but Bradley Sellers does finally get across the line there in 5th place as it stands. So, results. Let's talk about them, because if you had asked me to predict this race at the top of the race, I would not have been able to predict this. Nicholas Kirsten bringing it home in 1st place over Wouter de Bruin. Timon Subic in 3rd. Ben Borman in 4th. Ross Smith in 5th. Becky Ely in 6th. Dan Herlock in 7th. Bradley Sellers in 8th. Luca Tavanari in 9th. And Magnus Dahlgren fighting all the way back up into 10th place after a 55-second stop hold at the top of this race. Alexander Schultz in 11th. Oliver Day in 12th. JT Tammy in P13. Busink in 14th. Peter Meyer in 15th. Neil Wood in P16, Scar Pope into 17th, John Mayer P18, Adam Gray in 19th, and Dan Scott bringing it home 20th as one of our 4 DNFs. And just our other 3 DNFs to round out, Robin Molling, Eric Monet, and Pierre Moreno. 23 cars took the start, 19 cars finished this race. And I tell you what, Alex, you joined me for Monza, you joined me here, and they've been stellar races.
They have. It's... What can I say? Wow, and then some.
Wow, add another wow, and add one more wow, just for no particular reason other than the fact that we can. So we're going to grab and start our interview process. So we're going to grab our Div 3 overall winner here, Nicholas Kirsten. And Nicholas, the Ferrari... riding on board with you, it seemed like there was some understeer, but in the end, it seems like you were able to get to grips with the car handling near the end. Talk to me about your race.
Hello. Yeah, it was a quite intense race for the first 45 laps or so. Very close battle with Wouter all the time. Actually, I expected him to pit earlier than he did. I hoped I could get through during the pit stops, but yeah, then when he went past half distance, it was clear I had to pass him on the track somehow. And yeah, luckily there was an opportunity, and I could get through. Don't know what happened to Wouter then. I think he lost half a minute, maybe some incident. Don't know.
I believe what happened was he had to take a pit stop there near the end. So maybe just a little bit of fuel miscalculation. Nicholas, I got to ask, how's it feel to have the win here at Bridgehampton? Because, I mean, for lack of a better phrase, it seemed like you were really, really fighting the car from top to bottom.
Yeah, actually, I think the car didn't handle too bad. I set it up with a bit of understeer because I knew that the rear tires would wear more than the front tires. So in the end, the car was very well controllable. Yeah.
So, Nicholas, looking at the championship standings, this does help close your gap to Bradley Sellers going into the final 2 races of the season. What are your thoughts on the championship and any chance that you jump ahead here and bring the championship home?
Yeah, I hope so, of course. I think we have the hill climb the next race. Yeah, always something special. Just have one shot at it. 5 minutes or so. Very high concentration, and yeah, if it's for the championship, it adds a little bit more pressure.
Absolutely. And anyone you want to thank, anyone you want to shout out before we let you go?
Yeah, I think actually my parents were watching the broadcast, so greetings to them, and of course, big thank you to the organizers and you guys in the broadcast booth here.
Awesome. And thank you. We'll see you here in a couple weeks' time at the hill climb.
See you then. Bye.
All right. And from there, we'll go ahead and grab our next finisher, our next winner here. And we are going to bring in one Mr. Ben Borman, winning out Div 1-2. Teammate Becky Ely makes it a 1-2 for the team. But Ben, the YouTube chat called your car a skateboard. And I have to say, that's such a good way to explain how the Lotus looks. But the skateboard looked like it was on rails and just handled like a dream.
Again, I'm going to say the same thing as always. It's a lot of fun, but it's not always going where you point it. But yeah, it felt nailed down today.
And Ben, obviously the Lotus has a smaller fuel tank than other cars. How were you able to offset that so much to have your win? Was there any fuel saving going on, or did you kind of just say, I'm going to drive it and pit when I need to pit, and it'll just work itself out?
This circuit and 55 laps was just right to not have to worry about anything, which is a nice change after the previous 3 or 4 circuits where there was just no way to make up for the short stints. The longer circuits, we can't use all of the fuel tank because we don't have enough fuel to get round an extra lap, so we end up only using 2/3 or 3/4 of the fuel tank. So this race was just perfect. Go out, last round, get the lap times, get the result.
And Ben, of course, coming up is going to be the next hill climb, Provence Alps, and then Paris. What are the thoughts for the team, for you, and for the car here for the final 2 rounds?
Well, Becky was really looking forward to being able to get some points towards the end of the season, and with the hill climb, we should do that. And Montléry, I don't know. Got no idea what that circuit's like. It's got some really long sections, but like Sebring, we might be surprised. And they're just where the twisty bits come might give us a chance to just hang on to the slightly faster top end cars.
Absolutely. And Ben, anyone you want to thank, anyone you want to shout out before we let you go?
Oh, again, just say hi to my dad if he's around, and I've got a Le Mans ticket for him. If you could let him know.
Oh, that is awesome. That is. Don't listen to James. Don't listen to James. No, we'll make sure that he knows that the Le Mans ticket goes to him and not to James Parfit. That's okay.
Okay.
So, thank you, Ben. We'll see you here in a couple weeks at the hill climb.
See you around.
James, trying to take a Le Mans ticket from Ben Borman's dad.
Hold on a minute. He said, let my dad know, right? If we just now ignore that, cut that bit out, don't tell his dad, and I'll DM Brad and say, look, so I'll DM Ben and say, sorry, mate, your dad didn't hear it. I will happily join you instead.
I don't know if broadcast heard that or not. I'm going to assume they didn't, so I just won't repeat it.
Oh,
okay. There we go. They did hear it.
Oh,
All right.
I made sure the lovely guys at home heard that. Perfectly fine.
There we go. Anyways, if you're Ben Borman's dad and you're around, he has a Le Mans ticket for you. So that's the message communicated. Now, what you do with that information?
We're trying to just stop it. Stop telling him.
Oh, you two get a room.
All right. Well, we'll jump from that case and the ticket of Le Mans. We'll go to Adam Gray. Adam Gray running through the only Div 1-2 AM to finish here. And Adam, I got to ask, how'd the car feel?
The car felt good, to be honest. It's just a shame I had no one to race.
I mean, you seem like you had plenty of racing going around, though.
Yeah, obviously they were a lot faster, the pros, and the obviously Div 3s. So, yeah, didn't really have no one to race at my same level.
And Adam, I gotta ask, when you're in a situation like that where it's a smaller class and things happen, you know, is it just a case of run your own race, or did you try to spice things up a little bit with some of the pros? What were you kind of doing?
So basically, I was just trying to make my laps consistent, really. Just concentrate on my own race. I did try racing a few of the Div 1-2 pros, but obviously I was going to lose that game. Yes, literally just add my own race or putting laps on to get consistent time.
Well, it seems like you did a pretty good job of that, because things were, very close across the entire field. Even between, qualifying, I think 7 seconds is what separated first from 23rd in qualifying today. So it seems like everyone was fairly close to compete, regardless of, class or car. Before we let you go, anyone you want to thank, anyone you'd like to shout out?
Just the CMS crew, they did a fantastic job. Every season putting these races together in the modern or the histories, and I know Dom spent a lot of time trying to get this track sorted for us, so a big thank you to all those.
Awesome, and a big shout out to you, Adam. Congratulations on the win. We'll see you in 2 weeks for the Province Alps hill climb.
Yep, sure, looking forward to it.
All right. Well, Alex, we've had a wild day. Monza was wild a couple weeks ago. We've had a wild day here today in New York, and now we're going to jump to a hill climb here in a couple of weeks. Can't ask for much more for the end of the season.
No, not at all. I mean, it just really goes to show how close the championship can be heading into the business end of the season. So, yeah, 2 different circuits, 2 different challenges. The drivers have got to be on their A game, buddy.
No championship is decided yet, so still plenty to go around. And if you want to tune in, be sure to like, subscribe, ring the bells, do all of those things that you can do to support us here for the stream. But on behalf of Alex Goldschmidt, on behalf of one Mr. James Parfit behind the cameras, my name is Bradley Dalton. We've taken you start to finish here at Bridgehampton today. Be sure to join us on the next one where we'll take you start to finish yet again. Good night.